Welcome from Christine's favorite spot, and it's not her podcast studio.
No, well, it is now.
Okay. Well, I guess that's the power of having a portable microphone. So anything can be a studio, a beach. Why don't we record there sometime?
Remember when my brother and I took all our recording equipment to the beach?
For that photo shoot?
Yeah, and then we got back and I was like, Em will never know. And then it was just covered in sand.
Well, that's fine. I mean,
I had to be like, this is really awkward, Em, but I borrowed your microphone and dropped it on a beach in like 2 hours away.
I forgot those when Sandy and I shared equipment. Oh, the days.
Good times, aw.
Now I should share something of his. How's that loft in New York doing?
Yeah, loft. Yeah. That's quite a word. He's going to be thrilled you called it a loft.
Is it? Is it not a loft?
I mean, what's a loft? Isn't that like a fancy, like a penthouse thing?
Oh, I'm not in my mind.
I have no idea.
In my mind, a loft was just also an apartment. I don't know, but then
to me, loft makes me think of lofted ceilings. I think that's why maybe in my head it's fancier.
Is that why it's called a loft? I've literally never known what it was called.
I have no clue.
Huh. Look at us not knowing things.
Word.
What a good way to start this.
It's an upper room or floor. Yeah, so it's kind of like a penthouse thing, I think. Like a lofted apartment is like the top floor.
Well, you can tell him I still think he probably lives in a loft. I don't know anything about his apartment, so I'm just let's just make it up.
I guess you don't listen to Beach Too Sandy because on the background of Beach Too Sandy, you can see cars driving by because he lives like out on the street.
He lives under a loft for sure.
For sure, big time. Don't we all in that regard?
My loft is an attic, I guess. What's your loft? 3 more floors?
My loft is just a great big loft in the sky, you know what I mean?
Christine, today feels weird and I don't know why.
No, what is that? I think I also have something in my teeth, but every time I go to check, I'm like, oh no, everyone can see me do it.
Let me see.
Give everyone
a tour, a teeth tour.
Oh, let's see, there's something.
Do you have a tooth you're insecure about?
That's a really good question. I mean, definitely where they pulled this one after I broke it on a piece of popcorn. What about you? So it's like the absence of a tooth.
This one always makes it look like it's darker because it's behind the others.
Oh, mine too. Yes, I have the same.
I always feel like people think my tooth's like browning or something. I don't know. I'm just always paranoid.
Like when I use like whitening strips, I like push it in there to be like.
Yeah.
That's so gross. Sorry, everybody.
This is the only tooth that pretty much I needed braces for, and then I got braces twice, and it still shifts. So,
mine is still done too.
Yeah, she's a wily one. She's the troublemaker.
Good times. And why do you drink this week besides your wily teeth?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I'm just in like a weird headspace today.
What's going on? I feel really weird too.
I don't know. Maybe it's something in the air. Maybe we both sense winds in the east. I don't know. Maybe it's I don't know. Help me. I don't know.
I feel like I've just like exited this plane and I don't know how to come back.
Maybe I've just checked the fuck out. I don't know.
You know,
maybe everyone else is feeling this way too.
Remember the listener stories where they were talking about laying back down into your body? I feel like that. Like I'm doing that. Like I'm trying to re-enter my own body and failing.
Sure. I understand that.
It's like I'm just kind of up here and I feel like I can't get in the zone.
Okay. What do you usually do to get in the zone? Not even for a podcast, just like to get yourself gassed about anything.
I don't think I have a method.
Really?
Do you?
I have like it's almost like a box of goodies and I'll pull one out, but it's never the same.
How does that work?
Like one of the things would be I listen to the theme song from Practical Magic.
Oh, so music always helps for sure.
Another one is I buy myself a sweet treat, which I didn't do today. Maybe that's why I'm off.
Oh, that's probably what's going on.
Maybe I've Pavlovianly started treating myself to the scary man who shows up with my DoorDash. I didn't call for him today.
You wanted that thrill of his arrival and the mystique of a knock on the door.
Maybe he's the only thrill I get sometimes. Maybe I just need to feel something.
Maybe the only thrill I get is watching you almost get abducted every time you open your door.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. I think I'm enjoying being home, which is like it never fucking happens. We finally don't have a foster dog in this house, which is nice. I like for a second it feels like there's enough space for
Man,
everyone.
some of the pictures you were sending, I was like, these fur balls. I don't know how they do it.
Um, and what else? What am
You
I
know what
doing
I
later
think it
today?
is? It's February 3rd. That feels like such an anticlimactic day.
Sorry to everyone whose birthday's today, but yeah, I agree.
If it is,
Um,
I'm happy for you because I feel like that's a good day to have a special event. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah.
Like in
No
my
one's
life,
no
it's
one's
not
busy.
nothing, it doesn't mean much to me right now.
It,
So, yeah, I don't know. I feel
it's
like it's
not
just
the
kind of in between.
It's not the Blaze effect where like his birthday's always on a holiday. February
Yeah.
3rd, everyone's free.
Yeah.
Am I
Yeah.
missing something? What else is going on February 3rd? Nothing. Valentine's Day's in like a week
In
and a
the air.
half. In the air. Yes, Cupid is starting to descend.
Oh, God.
Um
Look out.
and I don't know if I'm even doing anything for Valentine's Day. Well,
I don't
maybe Alice will
either.
surprise me.
I was supposed to go to a wedding this weekend. I was so excited. I was going to be up at the Dayton Art Institute. It was going to be beautiful. And then Blaze tore his ligament off his own femur and then had the audacity to get extremely ill with either COVID or the flu. We're not entirely sure, but he's been just laid up.
Well, that's why
So,
you're burnt out. You've just been 24/7 mom, like
oh,
without
it
any
that
backup.
actually, I did text you yesterday, I think, in the haze of it.
Yes.
I was
Yes.
like nearly dead. I was like, I don't know. And then I remembered we had an episode today and I was like, oh my God, I have to do like a work day after putting Leona down for bed at 8 o'clock. It was a very overwhelming feeling, as most parents have probably experienced. But Blaze is back at it today, a little bit better. Well, a lot better. Because we're recording this days later, but he's back in the swing of the routine. So I'm here. I'm
Very and
back
grateful
on.
for a good guy.
Yeah. I'm back. He also knows he's in trouble for breaking his own body so much. To the detriment of all of us. But they're at the zoo now, and it's 61 degrees out here. I think everything here just feels topsy-turvy. Like,
Humpty Doo.
Humpty Doo. It's really warm out. It's February 3rd. I'm in bed, and I should be in a studio. I think I've just set myself up for failure, and I apologize about that.
Yeah, I don't know. Today
And
would be a
last
good day
week I had a mental
for.
breakdown on air, so I think it's hard to follow that up. Remember?
No, remind me. Um,
Careful.
you know what I think I need to do? I think I need to buy myself a gift. I think that's what I'm gonna do today.
Wait, I kind of like that. I've been on a no buy for like a whole month, so I think I also deserve a fun little treat.
See? Okay. See, that's why I'm gonna drink today, because we're both gonna have fun little treats by the end of this. What are you gonna buy? Tell me. What are you gonna search for when you start? Because one thing I do, sometimes I don't know what I'm gonna buy. I just go on Etsy and my fingers go a wandering on that keyboard. What's the first thing you're gonna type out and search and just see? Maybe I buy
Okay,
it.
I'm not going to online shop. That's one of my things that I'm trying to cut back on. However, I may go to S-Bucks and get a little FLT at S-Bucks or at probably a local coffee chain, since, part of the no buy, I guess, is trying to be a little more conscientious. But I don't know. Maybe I'll get myself like a little lavender latte or something.
I'm gonna online shop.
I mean, normally I would, and I did, and I do every single day. So I'm very actively trying to slow my roll in that regard, and have been more successful than I expected. So,
nice.
I want to keep it up.
I could always use a fun little thing, because usually my online shopping, if I'm having a day like this and I'm like, I don't know what's going on, I need to heal myself with a purchase. I try to keep it small but mighty. So I do like, I'll give myself like to give myself the high of like buying a bunch of stuff, I'll buy like 10 stickers or like 10 enamel pins or something that are like for sale. So in that way I feel like I'm in abundance, but I also haven't like broken a bank. So
I love that.
I'll probably do that today. I think that's
I just used to buy everything that I thought of at every moment. So, I was healing myself constantly and it wasn't working. I don't know why, but it wasn't. So, this year I was like, I'm going to try a little something different. And Rocket Money is thrilled. Rocket Money is like, are you okay? Did you die? Should we call the authorities? Something's going on.
Well, my Rocket Money is like, obviously you have not died.
Your enamel pin budget is out of control.
I will say one of the things that I treated myself to this weekend, because I was also having not really a sad day. I was in a funk. I was just kind of like, nothing. There's no real reason. I just don't feel great. And oh, hang on. Do you want to use the audio device M's phone's microphone? No,
certainly not.
Certainly not.
I mean, I want to use it, but only for my own nefarious purposes, not for the episode.
Yeah. Well, nice.
Thanks.
So I was in a bit of a little funk, and so I was like, I'm just gonna treat myself and go somewhere and do like a little self date. And so I took myself right down the road and I did like a Warner Brothers tour, which I've done like 20 times.
It's your favorite though. It's a comfort thing for you.
Yeah. Well, there's nothing I love more than being able to insert myself into a fantasy world. And so
it's like those old people who used to go to work at Coney Island and then like make a nickel.
And then just like that. Except I left without any nickels. That's so weird.
You did it wrong then. Yeah, that's what it reminds me of. I think I've just lost the plot, but I'm with you now. I'm back. You went to the Walt Studios, went to a magical, fantastical world to escape the drudgery of everyday life. Yeah.
I did. There's nothing I love more than being on a back lot.
What's your favorite like set? No, I know, but like which like set is your favorite to like pass every time?
There's one that's called Hennessy Street, which is like the New York street. It's like it's the corner where like if they ever had to do exteriors of like Central Park from Friends, it was there. If they ever had to do,
that's so cool. So it's very iconic.
It's very iconic. It's and it looks as it did since the 30s. Like they created that street for the musical Annie.
Shut up.
Like the first movie version, I guess, of Annie.
Wow.
Or I guess that would be the 30s or the 80s, because there was an 80s one too. Anyway, one of the Annies, I think it was the 1980s version because there was a big fire. I like almost know all the history at this point to this place, but it hasn't changed since. But if you ever see the movie Annie and like Miss Hannigan walks out and everything, it looks exactly like that when they aren't dressing it for something else. So it just feels very like old New York. And then I also really like
does it change when you go past it? Like, do people still use that set?
Oh yeah, all the time.
Okay,
they have 12 backlots, but when you're not filming, you have to take everything down.
I've never done this tour.
Program comes in or another show comes in. My other favorite street is Midwest Street. That's Stars Hollow and for Gilmore Girl fans.
Wow.
And it looks like Stars. Name. Fun fact: Stars Hollow. If they're ever in like the city, if you see a building behind them, that's like a red storefront. That's also the bar in Shameless.
Wow.
I know. It's very fun. I really like doing it. I do it way too often. If they had a season pass, I would go all the time. I mean, it's in my neighborhood. It's a lot cheaper than Disney World.
I mean, think about it. If you had kids too, it'd be like, hop in the car. We're going to the, like
going to Stars Hollow again.
What's there to do today? Let's do that. I love that. I love that you have this activity.
Anyway, it made me feel good. And then also, they have a cupcake there I'm a big fan of, because at the end you go to like a coffee shop that's dressed as Central Park. And they always have this chocolate cupcake I'm a big fan of. So that was my sweet treat after my fun day. And then I had a good day. So all that, maybe I go back to Warner Brothers today after this. I don't know.
Maybe I go back to Warner Brothers after this.
Okay. I've talked enough. What do you drink? Why do you drink?
Oh, geez. Well, I got my water bottle here, my good old Stanley, my orange one with my Scrappy sticker.
Look at that little squirrel.
Which I actually got you the same one. Like, I got us matching Scrappy stickers, but it's in my drawer and I have yet to give it to you. So.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it. I'll definitely put it on my Stanley.
Thank you.
Since mine's Nike. And do you have a reason why you drink besides just being in a funk, or you think that's probably it?
I definitely said a reason. Now I don't recall.
Blaze, I think.
Yes, Blaze. Just
okay,
kidding.
Great.
Oh no, because I missed that wedding. I was bummed. I was really excited.
Right.
And it was like the last wedding of the friend group, And so it was like,
that sucks.
everyone came into town for it. And so it was like, oh, well, we lost our like little shot. And people have kids now, so it's like harder. Anyway,
Yeah,
kind
it
of a
sucks.
bummer. But, it happens. Life happens. I sent them a nice little wedding honeymoon gift as a apology.
Nice. Well, maybe Allison and I will get married. Just kidding.
Good one.
Just know you always have someone who's not married next to you. So
Thank you.
Maybe there's always a wedding away for you.
I know. That's a hope I cling to.
Yeah. Well, you and my mother. So
I feel like that's not the first time we've had this conversation.
She's amazed that anyone can not want to get married. And she's done it a million times. So who's she to complain?
She's like, it's so easy.
She's like, trust me, you can just do it again if you don't want to.
And there's so many parties involved. It's like, why wouldn't you want to do this?
I think she's just like, you got to come to so many of mine. I don't get to come to any of yours. That's so not fair. Anyway.
Always the bride, never the guest at the wedding.
That is the cross she bears.
Never the mother of the what do you call it?
You're killing it. I love it.
Person.
Never the mother of the person, always the mother.
Wow, that's so dark for her. Look, they're sitting on my teeth again. What is going on?
Is there? I think you're making it up. I don't see anything.
They saw it. They all saw it.
Okay. Well, yeah, they're all talking about it in the comments. Okay. I have a part 2 for you. I don't know if you remember.
Oh my God, I already forgot.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
Here's the thing. The Skims undies, they're really fucking comfortable. Like, game changing.
A delight.
Like, game changing. I was walking around like, ooh, la la. I just felt so... felt so cozy in them. I just was so surprised because I'll be honest, I bought my underwear from the same place my whole life, really, and I have not thought to change it up. And I'm like, what have I been missing,
And Skims has their Fits Everybody collection. The material is worth the hype. It is so comfy. I mean, talk about buttery, talk about stretchy, talk about it. I'll warn you, it looks tiny, but give her a try.
Oh,
and
the stretch.
It does fit.
It fits. It's so beautiful. Okay, people. The Fits Everybody collection is available in sizes XXS to 4X. You can shop now at skims.com and Skims stores.
After you place your order, be sure to let them know that we sent you, select podcast in the survey, and be sure to select our show in the drop-down menu that follows. As all of you know, I was just back in my mom's house for the last month, and that means I was in my childhood bedroom. And instead of her keeping it like a shrine as if I was hit by a bus, she has turned it into the cat's room. And so the whole time I was walking around, it just, I'm now going to be sending her some Pretty Litter.
I've loved Pretty Litter for years. It's just such a really genius invention. First of all, it's a non-clumping formula that traps odor and moisture. It's ultra absorbent. It's lightweight. There's like barely any dust, that like litter dust. 1 6-pound bag works for up to a month. And the coolest part, to me at least, is that it changes color to indicate early signs of potential illnesses in your cat. So UTIs, kidney issues, those kind of things that cats are prone to, it can like give you a hint that maybe, take them to the vet, which is so cool.
And since Pretty Litter ships right to your door, you never run out. You don't have to worry about huge kitty litter bags taking up space, and you don't have to go out in the cold and lug those huge tubs from a store.
Indoor cats and indoor humans agree. Pretty Litter helps my house smell fresh and clean. Go to prettylitter.com/ATWWD to save 20% on your first order and get a free cat toy.
Okay, so for those who listen backwards, don't do that this time because my story, this is a part 2. This is the Humpty Doo Poltergeist. What do you remember from the Humpty Doo Poltergeist so I can fill you in?
What don't I remember? I remember that this was a group of folks, Fifth Wheel was involved, who lived in a kind of biker home, and they had this poltergeist who was throwing gravel from the driveway at them inside the house, and then they were like shocked that it kind of took the media by storm.
Yeah. So, well done, Christine.
Thank you.
And that's what you missed on Glee. So, yeah, the place is they're like, it's just raining rocks on them. They're just getting pelted with stuff. They're also getting pelted with like knives and shards of glass and bullets.
I forgot about the drawer. I'm like, a little gravel from the driveway. You're like, well, there's also knives and shards of glass. Right. Those also. Yeah. And bullets. Fuck.
And they've had 3 different clergymen come in, and all of it has failed. They've seen the rocks form themselves into piles and turn into...
and there was the guy that they thought it was their friend Troy, but it was spelled wrong. And then his mother came and said she didn't know. And then the roommates were like, it's not our friend.
Yeah.
He wouldn't throw a knife at me. He did that one time, but we were really drunk. Okay. It never happened
really
again.
Politely for him to stop, and he didn't. So riddle me that.
Riddle me this.
And then the rocks were creating like designs like a cross and a trident or maybe a pitchfork, and then they like exploded everywhere.
Imagine they
started to
was
spell words.
Trident, like we did. Like I immediately said trident.
Well, they all said trident too. I'm the only one here saying pitchfork, but that makes sense, right?
Of course it makes sense, and of course it pissed the devil off. Like he's like, I just made a trident to scare you, and you're calling it like the fucking Little Mermaid prop. That must have pissed him right off.
They and then they have a little kid there named Jasmine, but Jasmine it hasn't messed with Jasmine, so that's one of the reasons why they've stuck around. They're like, as long as it stays on us, and every time something has hit them, it is like allegedly really soft and like,
oh yes, yeah,
it's almost like it just wants attention and it's not actually trying to hurt anybody. So that's one of the reasons why they allow it, even though they just see knives getting thrown across the room all the time.
Right.
Couldn't be me.
Could probably be me, but
I think Blaze has to live with that, and you just throw things across the room.
Oh, that's why it sounds so familiar. Yes.
Yeah. You're like, give this ghost a break.
I'm like,
damn,
what?
It's I
don't understand the problem here.
A little too close to home for Christine. So that is where I left you. Oh no, that's not where I left you. I left you where after the clergy came multiple times and like the crucifix and the Bible were getting ripped up and thrown across the room, that ended up spreading through the town, and local media found out, and then people started reaching out, and now Channel 7 has exclusive rights to film here and get the piece for their show. I think the show was called like Today Tonight or something.
Oh yeah, and everybody was a believer within the first like hour.
Well, yes, and everyone on the crew came and immediately believed in the story. So blah 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 blah. Here we go. Okay, so eventually the tenants make a deal with Channel 7's Today Tonight program. It seems very National Enquiry or like tabloidy. So I don't think anyone legitimate was coming to get the story because I thought it was bullshit. So it was kind of like, oh, well, we'll take it because at least it's interesting. And Channel 7, they originally were going to bring in just 2 cameras. They ended up with like 7 cameras, like all filming around the house at the same time. And the camera crew stayed at the house for a full week. And ironically, Channel 7 was there. And there was a reporter there also named Max. He was a writer for a magazine in the area.
Oh, Mad Max.
Exactly. This is his start, actually.
Mad Magazine Max.
Actually, that'd be hysterical if Mad Max did a piece for Mad.
Just saying.
So Max and also this crew for Channel 7, they were the ones who got to come in. They went in, I think, because they thought this wasn't possibly real. They went in assuming that the activity was a hoax, and they planned to debunk it for the show. They were like, oh, we're just going to go in there and like prove
which would also be a fun show.
That would be fun. I think that's called like Mythbusters or something.
Oh, yeah.
But one of the things the crew did was they also brought in a thermal camera, which you and I have used on our investigations.
We've gotten some creepy stuff. We
got a picture of a full body, which, like, by the way, maybe we'll put that in this show because, can we like put that on the screen?
Yeah.
Because that got taken out of the live show because no one fucking reacted. The audience didn't.
We tried so many times, and it like didn't. People just didn't
play.
It didn't play, and that happens all the time. Like, if you saw early versions of the show of the tour, and you see the last, like so much has shifted and changed, and I feel like we clung on to this picture for so long because we were like, but it's so creepy, but we eventually just had to cut it. But yeah, I'm curious. We should post it also on social media and see if anyone finds it interesting. Yeah, it did not play well. We were like, is this thing on? It was rough.
It also sucks when, like, I've talked about it before, but like the amount of hours it takes staring in the dark at silence and like just hoping you get something. And then after all the hours and days and days and days of looking through footage, you finally find something. And then the audience doesn't give a shit. And I'm like, what? I'm like, this is so good.
It's also like crazy when you and I work each other up and Eva and
Yes.
we amp each other up and we're all like on the same page and then like nobody agrees and we're like, and you know, I don't even know that it's nobody finds it interesting. I think maybe it just doesn't play to an audience. Like, it's not like, oh my God, you know, it's more like, huh, that's crazy. But it just doesn't work for a live audience.
It didn't push the story, I suppose. It didn't push the narrative along.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was when we were at the Queen Mary in the boiler room. And there was someone there who died. Something in there exploded. He ended up burning to death, and now he's known to like linger. Pipe. He's known to linger in that area. We got a full ass picture of a person standing there, and the crowd goes mild apparently. So
I've never heard that. I'm sorry. I'm assuming this is like a thing, but that was very funny.
It is a thing, but thank you. I'm going to take the credit for like 5 seconds. But anyway, so yeah, we'll put that picture up, and that was taken using a thermal camera, which finds heat signatures.
It's also called like a FLIR, right? FLIR.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Yeah.
I forget what it stands for.
I do too, but my stepdad had one all the time growing up, and he would like walk around the house to check where air leaks were. Of course, they were always in my room. They had to tape up all the damn windows.
Well, no, it's a very cool piece of equipment, especially for ghost hunting, especially if you're trying to like do like serious ghost hunting and like debunking things, because if someone says like, oh, there's always this cold draft that comes by, it's like, okay, well, this heat signature shows it's coming straight from that area, which happens to be an air vent or something. So
yeah, and I feel like also it's cool when you're when you're somewhere like the Queen Mary where the boiler room is completely empty. There's not an employee down there. There's nothing actively running. It's just completely left alone. Completely still. Well, yeah, still not still enough for my liking, but it's supposed to be very still. And then you have this thing, and you're like, what is back there? And like you can see the shape of a body in the dark, and oh my God, it's unsettling. So yeah, I'm sure that probably also does not translate when we show it on stage. But yeah, this is a great point. Let's put it on socials and a video and see if anybody can, is intrigued.
Well, so they decided that they were going to come in and bring obviously normal cameras to film it, but they also brought in a thermal camera to see if they could find any heat signatures on the things that are being thrown. If like body temperature had recently grabbed the things that are being thrown.
Okay.
And so another thing is they did not tell the housemates that they brought in a thermal camera because they wanted to try to catch them. Because the whole point is like, we came here to prove you guys wrong and like
to debunk. So you can't let them get ahead of the story. Okay.
Yeah. So the hope was that they could use this camera to see like if there were fingerprints left on the items that were being thrown.
Oh, that's so smart.
And weirdly, the crew discovered that the items being thrown had no warm fingerprints on them, but the whole item was hot, which doesn't make a lot of sense.
I wonder if it could be somebody holding it in their fist.
Yes, if it were like a small rock, maybe, but they were also finding it on like huge steak knives. And
and the whole thing was, yikes. Okay, I had, again, only thought of the rocks for some godforsaken reason. I think
you're shutting yourself off from the true other danger.
Clearly.
Well, so these items were being thrown and then checked for their heat signature, and they looked perfectly evenly heated up across the entire surface. And one camera operator even said that it looked like they'd been heated in a microwave and then thrown with tongs, so that the way there was no differentiation in it.
Can you imagine you like put on glasses, you see like a demon with tongs, like hot, like taking it out of the microwave, throwing. I mean, it's just like an insane visual.
Also, like using tongs as the middleman for your projectile. Like, you imagine like the sport of darts if you use tongs instead of your hands.
Think about how much more damage that could do if you chuck the steak knife with that
super
extra leverage. I'm glad that this demon is nice enough not to actually stab anyone, or that the rules are such that nobody can get stabbed, because a microwave knife seems like one of the worst ways to go.
But also maybe one of the better ways to go, because since it's warmed up, like now it's going to cut in like butter, you know what I mean? Like it's going to be a cleaner slice.
Maybe it'll cauterize. I guess it depends on how hot it is,
Oh, yeah. It's like, do you take it out or leave it in situation? It's like, well, is it cauterizing from the inside and now I'm okay? I don't know.
I think yes. The answer I think is yes.
Wait, everyone else weigh in, I
as a
suppose.
medical professional.
Well, while there, the crew endured quite a lot of poltergeist activity, which, by the way, we're talking about like the heat signatures of these thrown knives. We're not even talking about the fact that they walked into a house that was just having knives thrown everywhere, and then they
the knives
stuck
were
around.
Even throwing. Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Good point. Good point. That's big. We're all jaded about the knives throwing themselves. Yeah.
And I'd be worried too, because I'd feel like if it is the roommates pulling a hoax on everybody, like they don't know me. Like I'm more likely to actually get hurt.
True. You're like, am I walking
friend.
into a trap or something? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so they endured a lot of activity, and this includes, there's a whole list now for you of like things that this crew had to deal with. Their electrical gear freaking out. New items would appear in front of them, as opposed to like the steak knives and the glass. Now they were getting like coins and scissors appearing out of nowhere. Imagine scissors flying at you.
Scissors is bad, but they really did like not build the tension properly. Like if you had started with coins, gravel coins, and then like up to scissors, knives, you see where I'm going. It's like, coins, really?
Like also like after shards of glass and bullets, give me a nickel. Give me your dime.
Yeah, give me a dime. Go to. I need to go to Coney Island.
They also experienced flower vases smashing behind them out of nowhere, just like exploding.
That's alarming.
Rocks, again, constantly being pelted at them. Batteries throwing themselves into walls next to them, which is a heavy sound, by the way, if you've ever heard a battery drop.
Batteries are not something to be thrown, children.
That's a full-blown projectile. It feels equivalent to a bullet. I feel like if you put a battery in a gun, it's going to give the same effect as a bullet. You know what I mean?
What if you put a microwave knife in a gun?
Then that's technically a bow, like an archery
Is it
bow.
Technically a bow? Weigh in, everybody. If that
I
would
feel like
technically
a bow and arrow is just a sharper gun, you know?
Really? That's what a bayonet is.
Oh, well, no, that's both. That's a bow. That's an arrow and a bullet.
No, it's a knife and
a bullet.
Because there's no bow and arrow. Why are you trying to include archery in this? You know how I feel about archery.
Because an arrow and a knife are both sharp and pointy.
So
they do the same thing. They both stab you. I'm making perfect sense here.
But one comes off of the item, which is a bow.
Oh, okay. Well, by that definition, then yes, it would be more of a knife, I guess.
Wow, I won that argument real easy. I thought we were going to have a much longer back and forth.
No, I don't care enough. I think you're right.
Okay.
And also you made a good point too. So
fuck you then, I guess.
You also made a good point. What else? Flower pot, blah blah blah, a bayonet, I guess. No.
A compound bow, yeah.
Here's a creepy one. While loading their equipment into a van, a knife was thrown at their car. So even from it's no longer just inside the house either. It's like in the yard, shit's getting thrown.
So even when you're not inside, it's like pissed off that you're even there. It sounds like. I don't know. Yeah. It's weird.
But then that also makes me wonder. I'm like, oh well, I guess is it a roommate who just like wants you off the property? Like that feels like they could have gotten away with it and no one was looking. Tools flew into the garage roof, which feels terrifying for some reason. Instead of them just flying across the room, going up freaks me out.
Yeah, I don't like that.
Especially when multiples are doing it at the same time. It's like they've all decided they're just going to drop at any moment. Like we don't talk about what happens after it goes up into the roof. Do you just like do this and just like wait every second?
So do they mean like inside the garage?
Yeah.
Or like on the outside of inside. Oh, ew, like up to the rafters and stuff?
Yeah. Like they just fly up and then it's like,
horrible.
Well, at what moment do you drop?
So they're just like on the ceiling and you're just like waiting for a pitchfork or a trident to fall down and kill you. Okay.
Like officially you never go in the garage because something's going to drop.
You never know.
But even if it didn't drop from the ceiling, I guess anything on a shelf could just fly at you. I don't know.
Anything sharp? Yeah, I don't like that.
I could not tolerate this anxiety. I just could not do it. Rocks would teleport onto other sides of walls, which we talked about last time. A beer mug. Does that mean like a stein?
Like a beer mug. Yeah.
It was thrown through the window, and then knives and shards of glass were thrown at them. That the shards of glass came from the window. So a mug, and then the window shards of glass got thrown at them. They heard scratching in the ceilings, and then even more messages appeared made out of rocks that said, "No TV, no cameras, pig camera." And then on one of the guy's microphones in little pebbles, they had the word "go" written out, like "get out of
Ooh.
here."
Ugh. Oh no, no TV, no cameras. Pig camera?
Ugh. Pig camera, yeah.
Ooh, this is creepy.
2 other reporters came to visit during this time, and one had just been collecting seashells at the beach, which sounds like the exact opposite kind of time than this is. She had just been collecting seashells,
I
and
love
mid
that.
interviewing the housemates, an exact same seashell that she had just been collecting at the beach materialized out of thin air and dropped onto the table she was sitting at.
Ew, ew. So
Which
now
is
it like knows about your outside life.
yeah, it knows who you are before you walk in.
Gross.
She then got this like weird electric jolt from her microphone, and she saw items lift off the table and fly off by themselves. So she saw them go boom, whoop.
Weird.
Another reporter came, and she was the one who witnessed the mug flying through the window, and apparently it flew through. Originally I thought that the mug flew through the window and then shards of glass from the window came with it.
Yeah.
Apparently there was already a hole in the window because the window had already previously shattered from this fucking ghost. And then a beer mug flew perfectly through the hole. That's even fucking worse.
That's actually great. That's like some sort of barstool college sporting event, it feels like, you know?
It sounds like you have to have incredible accuracy.
Throw the
Imagine
beer
them on
stein
the
through the
archery
hole.
team. Imagine.
God. Imagine.
But no, like especially like it was apparently like the perfect sized hole, and
horrible.
it just made it through. Forget it. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, after this happened, the beer thing, the reporter and the housemates backed up against the wall because they were like, okay, I want to get like a clear view of everything in this room.
Mm-hmm.
And they also didn't want to feel anything like getting thrown past them or behind them. So they just wanted their backs against the wall. And once the backs were against the wall, then all of a sudden they still felt something on their neck, even though that shouldn't have happened. And when they turned around, rocks were raining down from the wall.
No way. Thank you very much.
Also around this time, a paranormal investigator came through. His name was Stephen Bishop, and I didn't really keep anything about his experience in here. First of all, no one really talked about it. They just said that he kind of appeared, which feels like what ghost hunters seem to do. They just arrive.
They do. They just kind of seem to roll on up. Yeah.
But he also was sounding a little Zach Bagans-y to me. He was saying like he could feel the residual energy and it felt like slime. Like it felt like he was just being very flowery. And I don't know if these like rough and tumble kind of biker guys were all about that. It's like, okay, residual energy, like get the knives out of here.
They're like, we have a baby living here. Okay. No more of this slime talk. Figure this out.
Apparently this entity seemed to know if a camera was pointing in a certain direction because even though it loved to throw things, it still somehow knew wherever the cameras were pointing, and the activity would always almost get captured. It was just out of frame every time.
That's so fucking infuriating. Seriously.
So,
that's like every one of these stories, and it like drives me nuts because
tease me-o.
And it's tease me-o because I believe it, because I feel like I've seen things like this happen where technology glitches right when something wild
that's always
happens
perfect timing.
And we've had that happen even on our investigations. And so it's like, it's not even frustrating in the way that I'm sure a lot of skeptics see it as like, oh, again, you just don't capture it. To me, it's frustrating. Like, no, it happens. Like the camera cuts out. I don't know why, but it happens.
At the Whaley house, we still don't know if we're gonna like find a way to put the footage out there. But at the Whaley house, something really scary happened, and I remember half the footage after that was Christine on her camera just going, I really hope we got that. I really hope we got that. I really hope we got that. Because it was scary and we were just convinced there's no way that the camera caught it or it would have happened just out of frame or it was too dark. And we did get it. Yay. But
thankfully,
there are so many times where something happens and even though it's scary to us because we were there, it just doesn't translate on camera and no one's going to care about that clip, you know? So
yeah, it just doesn't hit the same.
Yeah. So that was happening nonstop. It was almost like, oh, we're here for a little segment of yours. Well, yeah, you have nothing to show for it.
Oh my God, that would just drive me nuts.
For example, which you can still watch this segment on YouTube. So like if anyone wants to go watch, if you want to watch it, it's there. But one of the examples that I have is that the camera is facing the kitchen. It's like sitting on like a countertop or on a tripod in the middle of the kitchen. And just out of frame, you hear bam! And even like with such a force that the tripod shakes and the camera gets like jilted. And when people run in and grab the camera to like point at what happened, there was this big ass wrench that just got thrown against like the cupboard right next to the camera, right
That's
next to it.
outrageously, annoyingly frustrating and terrifying.
Which part of me feels like, what if it was trying to throw it at the camera and like knock the camera off its tripod or something? But then it has such good accuracy. It clearly just went.
It seems like it almost knows what it's
doing.
Out of frame. Yeah.
Well, from another camera's angle from a different room, you can see that nobody else was in the room. You can see people run into the room.
Oh, well, that's
like, what
good
the fuck
to know.
Was that?
So there wasn't like another. Yeah. Okay, that's validating, I guess.
Yeah. So unfortunately, despite days of being there and hundreds of hours of footage been there, all the activity was just off camera. And there were so many like that where you can hear the sound, or like there was they were filming like at the table, like all the people eating dinner, and then everyone hears a bang like right next to the camera, and you see everyone go, oh, see, there he went. And then all of a sudden there's like a knife against the wall. Like it's like
that's wild though.
It's so frustrating. So anyway, you would hear like a slam and the housemates would react, but you would never see the actual item. After a while, the crew was so frustrated about this that one of them screamed, "Come on! Like, give me a fucking break."
That's me. I get it.
And out of frame, a stone flew onto the table. So again, it was just like, how about fuck you?
Out of frame again. It's like, oh yeah, try me. Ugh.
The camera crew shouted again at the ghost and said, at least do one on camera if you're going to do this. And moments later, a camera somewhat caught footage. So like it was kind of like, I'll throw you a bone, but I'm still going to piss you off.
Did they throw a bone?
No, that'd be, then it's like, now it's a murder.
Now I feel like we're being threatened. Yes.
No, this was because they had that little baby living there. This was a baby bottle that fell off of a microwave. Ugh. But it was just for like one fucking frame. As the bottle is falling off, someone walks in front of the camera, and so you just see it mid fall.
Ugh, I have like those chills up my scalp that I used to get when we first started the podcast. That makes me just think of like that it has so much precise control that it can make sure one frame gets in. You know what I mean? Like that's just so weird how it can manipulate everything at once.
It like validates the theory of that they know space and time in a way we never will, because like it's able to manipulate any second. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's so right as someone's walking by, and you can see there's nobody else in the frame. So in theory, like it's a good enough clip where it's like, well, no one else was there, and there were two cameras.
Like you wish you got
the full thing.
Yeah.
So you see it falling, but only after someone's walked away.
I gotcha.
Moments after that, just to piss us right off, the cameraman started switching out camera batteries. And once the camera he was switching the batteries out of, after he turned it off and it had no more batteries in it, all of a sudden a piece of glass flies by him in the camera and lands right in where the frame of the camera would have been pointing.
That has happened to us where we pause to just order some food or change our batteries, or we realize our battery just died and then something happens and it's like, you have got to be kidding me.
It's so frustrating. And no one believes you. Or if they believe you.
It's such a constant thing, too.
We have been very lucky to be in now multiple haunted houses together. And we've gotten activity at every location. But there's nothing more infuriating when there's not a camera on it. And like, I'm so anal when we get into a house that like, okay, we have to set up the cameras immediately because we like there's not a moment too soon.
It's very, very intense.
We come up with like a setup for all of the cameras, and we come up with like a schedule for battery changes. I'm like, we cannot let a second go by without activity.
And yet somehow it still happens every now and then. But but like you're right, like we've learned our lesson the hard way a lot of times.
Yeah. The only other time during their stay that they got any footage was similar to the bottle thing, where like you kind of saw it fall, but not the full fall, just half of it. And it was a bullet falling onto the ground.
Good. A baby bottle and a bullet. Wow, that's just really poignant, huh?
I know, but wherever the the bullet was falling from. So for all we know, it rolled off a table. For all we know, it got thrown. Maybe it manifested out of thin air and just dropped. But it started right above the camera, so all you saw was it falling.
Wow. Yeah, so you could just say, oh, somebody like held it above it. God.
Yeah, so it's like we gave you kind of footage, but it's footage that no one will really care about.
Yeah, you can skeptics still won't believe you. Yeah.
Despite that, after they left, the crew went back to Channel 7 and they were fucking freaked out. They were like, we saw so much shit. And then
so much shit happening. Damn.
And then they were like, oh, here's all the hundreds of hours of footage. We got nothing. And so
hey, there's a baby bottle. It fell off the microwave. What?
It's like there was a bullet, but it looks like we dropped it. And even though they didn't really get anything, the viewers loved the piece, I think, because everyone in it was so... First of all, the crew was so convinced and freaked out, but then all of the tenants were just so jaded and over it. So it seemed real, like it was legit, that they would... you would hear them go, the mattresses turned themselves upside down on the wall again. And then the roommates would go, oh, here we go. Like, they did not look like they were in it for the fame. And... when the OG Channel 7 crew left, they had 2 people stay behind to get a couple extra shots. And so keep that in mind, that there was like a skeleton crew that stayed behind to get extra shots. So at the same time, Channel 7 is airing the segment. And I guess these extra shots that they were filming was like in case there was an update. But so Channel 7 airs the segment. They ended up having to do another segment right away with an update from this backup crew finding something as this was airing. What are the odds? It's like so poorly timed of like, oh, this is airing. And actually we immediately have to do another update because while it was on TV, this fucking happened.
Oops. The
backup crew got a lid flying in the air, like a pot lid. But, upon further investigation, someone on I think it was an editor, they saw that there was a cabinet's glass in the frame, and they saw a reflection in the glass that seemed to show somebody in the room with them. And this led people to suspect that it must be one of the housemates throwing an item from behind the camera. So the only person in the house at the time was Kirsty. And what are the odds as soon as the pot lid gets thrown, Kirsty walked into frame being like, what was that? So immediately people are like, well,
Kirsty, what the fuck?
All of a sudden people are like, it must be Kirsty. But Kirsty denies everything. She said that she was folding laundry. She heard a big ass sound and she walked by the cameraman to go, what was that? Later it was said that Kirsty... So yeah, that becomes like a whole thing of like, was it a hoax? Did Kirsty get away with it this whole time? But like, you would
this
think...
feels like a linchpin in the argument, like skeptic versus...
Yeah. And I would be like, first of all, if I were Kirsty and this was a fucking stunt, I would have fucking slowed my roll because I would have been like, they're literally airing it right now. We got away with it. Like, don't fucking do anything else.
Right.
You know?
Like, why now throw another knife? I mean, unless you're like compulsively doing it for some reason and you can't control yourself or, some other reason. But yeah, it doesn't make sense logically, really.
So Kirsty did deny everything, but it ended up becoming this polarizing thing of, did Kirsty throw everything or not? Later, it was said that Kirsty confessed to Channel 7 that she was the one throwing the items, but that was out of context. Because after this segment came out and people were freaking the fuck out, and then this update came out, so now it's like a series of what's going on in this house. They were getting hounded with calls, and they were just like so fed up with the press, they didn't want anything more to do with it. And I guess the producer of Channel 7 kept calling her for a quote because she was like in the middle of this hoax controversy. So at some point on the phone, she said, this is a quote, "Say what you want. I did it. Is that what you want me to say? Just leave me alone."
God. Okay. So that's not even, come on, people.
So, and remember, Channel 7 is a very National Enquirer tabloidy thing. So as soon as they got a quote like that, they're just going to run with it.
You can take it out of context at that point. Yeah.
This led Channel 7 to determine and publicly announce that the case was a hoax and Kirsty was responsible and there was no poltergeist, and it totally killed interest for anyone who actually might have been able to help
Kirsty.
them. But also, if anyone wanted to help them, housemates were so hurt by the segment because they're like, we let you into our home for a week. We let you like see some pretty vulnerable stuff going on.
Hoax. Yeah.
Yeah. So they were officially like, fuck you, press. We don't want anyone approaching this house. However, in the perfect timing of the cosmos. This happens to be the exact moment as they're saying, we don't want anything to do with anyone else coming back to our house. 2 people are on their way to their house. And these 2 people, their names are Tony Healy and Paul Cropper.
Okay.
They are paranormal experts / cryptozoologists. They're just in supernatural.
I'm feeling it. Okay.
Remember I told you that the clergy had been here, the 3 separate priests.
How could I forget? Thanks, priests.
One of them ended up doing like a radio talk show about his experience because remember, this hoax is like taken the world by storm. So this priest is like, I'm one of the 3. I can tell you it was real. It's like, this is my moment.
Get it, priest? Whatever.
Honestly, get it, priest. There was a radio show that he was doing, and he was like, I know they're calling it a hoax, but like, I fucking saw shit. Like, it was real, and it's a real shame
so
that
he
nobody...
came to their defense, too. That's kind of nice.
And these 2 supernatural experts, they heard this radio piece, and they were like, well, we're obviously going over there to see it ourselves.
Obviously,
which, like,
immediately.
I love that this is a time and age where you could just get in a car and drive to a stranger's house. Like, your phone anxiety could never, but imagine approaching a person's home unexpected.
Okay, I think about this all the time, actually, because I listen to so many podcasts, and so many of them have reporters who do that. And you listen as they knock on the door, and then like they'll open just a screen, and then they'll talk over it and say like, at this point, a woman in her 40s opens the door, and she doesn't seem very comfortable with me being here. You know, it's like, and every time my palms are sweating so profusely, and I'm like, like I studied journalism, and there's a reason that I failed so dramatically at it, and it wasn't my lack of writing and
you got an F
skills.
In approaching screen doors.
It was literally social anxiety. You know, I was just like, how am I supposed to harass my, neighbors, like college classmates, let alone politicians on Capitol Hill? Like, are you kidding me? No, not happening.
It's kind of a wonder that even as kids, I was able to go to someone's door and just knock on it unexpected.
Oh my God,
and go,
I did so
I'm
much
here
dumb
now
shit.
To play.
I sold rocks that I pretended were I defrauded so many people by knocking on their doors. Like, maybe this is karmic justice. I don't know, but I know that I used to do some really unsafe, unhinged things when my mother was not aware, like the going to random neighborhoods and knocking on doors and stuff. So this is a newer phenomenon for me that it haunts me. But
it feels like it's a nod to yesteryear, though, because this was a time when everyone was just knocking on their doors.
I guess, right? Like, maybe that was just a thing.
I mean, that did happen. I feel like we're talking about it like it was so far long ago. But I remember as a kid, like, people just knocked on your door and the doorbell rang.
No, it wasn't that weird at all. Yeah.
But now when people knock on the door, you're like, shut the fuck up. Like,
really?
Don't
you're like, are you? Because you're more like, hey, let me open the door and oh, he was wearing a suit. That's why.
It's because my window's open and they can obviously see me. And now it's like, I'm obligated to answer the door.
Right. Right. So now socially, I must get kidnapped now if that's what's happening.
At least the last words were, he's in a suit.
I feel you. Listen, I feel you. I feel that very hardcore, which is why I hide whenever anyone is at my door.
But no, I remember when people would just knock on the door and my mom would just go, oh, I wonder who that is. And it was just normal. And now it's like, it's either Amazon or why would you answer the door?
Or like something alarming. Yeah, I wouldn't open the door unless you're expecting someone.
I remember the common phrase in my house was like, who could that be? And you would just open the door and whoever was there, it's now time to entertain them or it's time to have a conversation.
Come on in. Yeah.
I can't, the world is so different now. If I went and knocked on someone's door, any of my friends' doors, they'd be like, did we have plans? What are you doing here?
Yeah.
They'd be like, why are you here?
Actually, I would be like, is everything okay? Like, I'd be like, why didn't you call me? Like, I don't know, or text me.
Well, so these 2 random people, might I add, who are, to their belief, they are spiritual experts or supernatural
and to be fair,
experts.
This is what you do in journalism too. You don't let them know. I mean, it depends on who you're interviewing, but you don't let them know necessarily ahead of time because you don't want to spook them or you don't, so, I mean, I can see why this would be
time to...
Yeah, to trick you or whatever. This could be an advantage. Yeah, I could see.
Well, they just got in their car and drove. It was like 45 minutes away because apparently they were, in the moment, their fixation was cryptozoology, and they were about to go on a hunt for a yowie, which I have not covered yet, I don't think.
Oh, okay.
But they were about to do a yowie hunt, and listening to this radio show, they were like, this house is like 45 minutes away. Which, by the way, without Google Maps, how did you know that? Like, what are you doing?
Maps.
Yeah, but you can. do you look at a map and like how do you know minute by minute how long it would take? You know what I mean?
You would just learn it. Like, oh, this to this town's about a half hour, add a few minutes. I don't know.
Yeah, I couldn't be me. I look at
Listen,
the
I
map and go,
don't
for all I
know.
know,
I
that's
don't
9 hours away.
right, like I couldn't do it. Don't get me wrong. I guess that's how things went back then.
When I invent time travel, as you know, that will be happening. It already has
Right.
happened, actually.
And has.
I can't wait for the reality show where we put modern day people in the past and make them just live like a normal person. It's going to be such a good
So
TV show.
good, so good. I want to watch that right now.
Also, what is modern day if time is a continuum, you know?
Oh my God, my head.
Okay, so anyway, Jesus Christ. Tony Healy and Paul Cropper are trying to get to this fucking house. Paul Cropper, I've learned, calls himself the Cropster. Love that.
Yeah, okay.
He is everyone's dad. Just so you know.
Yep, definitely.
So they call themselves supernatural experts, which they are. They do like really like professional lectures on parapsychological stuff. So I mean, I'm gonna give them some credit. At least
them.
In that world, they know what they're talking about. They drop everything from their Yowie hunt and just go to this house to talk to the tenants. When they get there, the housemates post Channel 7 tarnishing their reputation. The housemates are like, get the fuck off our property.
Yeah.
I think they called them fucking vultures because they assumed they were part of the press.
Yeah, like swooping in, yeah.
And Tony and Paul, they're like, look, we're not part of the press. We're researchers. We just want to help. And they had actually not only been doing a Yowie hunt, but at the same time, they wear a lot of hats. They were on a Yowie hunt and they were also writing a book together about poltergeists.
Oh, sure.
And so it's you and me, pretty much.
Yeah, it is. It sounds vaguely familiar.
I'm the Cropster. I called it.
Thank God.
So they show them, I think, some of their work that they're doing on poltergeists, like most popular poltergeists in the area. Yeah. And they're like, oh, your case.
You're not just like tabloids. Oh, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, they were just going to show them the research and be like, your case seems very similar to this stuff that we've already studied.
See. Yeah.
So I guess that made them want to take it seriously. They, like you said, they were like, oh, okay, so you're not part of the press. You're actually doing solid research. Sure, you can come in. Go for it. And Tony and Paul ended up staying for 5 days and nights. Did you have underwear? Did you bring a toothbrush? I'm just wondering.
They were going on a snipe hunt already, so maybe they already had their car packed full of their duffel bags.
Maybe they brought it all with them. So this is a quote from Paul, the Cropster. Mm-hmm. He says, by the time we arrived, this ghost, remember, it's been on Channel 7 twice. It was doing radio shows. People were talking about this, so it's a big deal. Paul said, by the time we arrived, it had become Australia's most publicized polt case since the Gyra ghost, which I covered right before this.
I forgot they call it a polt.
A polt, yeah. Far from a bunch of drunken layabouts, as some of the media tried to portray them, the residents struck us as competent people, and it was clear that above all else, they simply wanted to be believed. Wow. Another quote about their time there is, for 5 days, it obliged us by showering us with pebbles, knives, bullets, and anything else which came into its ectoplasmic grip.
Ooh. Well said,
Writers
Cropster.
Indeed. While there, about 30 objects were thrown at or fell on Tony and Paul, and sometimes after just being put back in that box of frequent flyers. Remember, they had an item, a box of items. They would throw it down. They would throw things in the box. Seconds later, they'd be flying across the room again. Stones would rain on Paul. Another time, a bullet fell on him when he was at the table. Other times, a brass spark plug slammed onto the table in front of them. Piles of pebbles would be found sitting on their cars, which I think is so strange. Like now it's piling on their stuff and outside of the house.
Yeah, I don't like that at all. That would make me really uncomfy.
It feels like it's getting stronger in some way to me.
I do too.
On days when a lot of pebbles were found inside, because it was gravel from their driveway. So when pebbles were found inside, they would look outside and the gravel was fucking gone. Like there was even a quote from one of them saying it was as if someone vacuumed up all the gravel and like created ditches in their yard, that there were so many stones missing.
So it was like literally using those stones.
It said vacuumed by the thousands was the quote.
What the F? And, like, obviously, if this were I think if this were Kirsty, you would see her out there digging big trenches in the fucking yard.
Just
I
a
don't know.
big fucking bucket of
With
rocks,
a
yeah.
wheelbarrow? Like, come on.
And if they're saying vacuumed by the thousands, you have to assume that it's enough that someone's gonna notice, like, at least even if you're doing a handful at a time, you gotta be
It's
going out
like
there a lot.
a labor-intensive
Yeah.
situation.
A friend of the housemates came over one time and actually claims to have seen the poltergeist itself outside by the gravel, potentially, quote, reloading.
Ew. Who said
Um,
they saw this?
a friend that came to the house, and
Oh.
apparently they were like, I just saw something out by the gravel.
What
And
was it? They didn't say what it looked like?
they said it was a jet black solid orb flying away from the driveway very fast, but behind it there was like 2 feet of a stream of gravel following it.
So it was, like, picking it up like an airstream. Ew.
Which is so creepy because that answers our question about like,
Yeah.
does it blip into another room or does it travel there? But you could
Right.
see it all floating on its own as if they had some sort of like spell on the
Like
items and it traveled just with it.
like a
Like it
wind
was,
tunnel or something.
yeah.
I wonder
Um,
if that was something that only that guy saw. Like, it was, like, an accidental, like, he saw something
yeah.
he wasn't supposed to. You know what I mean? Maybe the
Ooh.
normal eye couldn't see it.
Imagine if that jet black orb turned around and all of a sudden went, don't say a thing, you know?
Oh.
So on multiple occasions, there was also this bottle opener in the house that would go missing, and when it reappeared, it would always come back newly polished.
What?
Which, like, I feel like, what is that? Are you trying to do me a
What's the point?
favor?
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to
Just
ever
it's
use this
so
ever again.
passive aggressive or passive question mark. I don't it's passive in general. I don't like just tell me what you want.
You know when a dog like ends up just stealing like an item and now it's just their item?
Yeah,
That feels like
you
you
can have
just
this.
take the bottle opener,
Yeah.
polish it
You
all you want.
clearly care a lot more about how shiny it is than we do.
Also, yeah, it's kind of a fuck you. It's like, oh, I used it one time and I have to re-fucking polish it. Okay, like thanks.
Yeah.
Um,
Jeez.
so Tony and Paul would hear rocks hit the roof and then scatter all over the kitchen moments later, aka teleport through the
Like
ceiling. So like they're hearing bam on the roof, and then all of a sudden there's rocks scattering on the
it's
floor.
so weird.
And one time, a house friend told them poltergeists don't hurt people. You have nothing to worry about because they don't hurt people. That's like one of the rules of poltergeists. They don't hurt people. And then all of a sudden, pliers were floating through the air. And when she went to grab them out of the air, it whacked her on the wrist.
It
As if it was like,
nice
don't tell me what to do.
try. Yeah. You don't
And
know
when
my powers. Ugh.
I hate it. And to get as much evidence as possible, one of the housemates, Andrew, he tried reading from the Bible that one of the priests left after he came to
No.
visit. But he
The
was
one where
doing
they
it.
ripped out all the pages.
Yes, but also like he was apparently doing it to piss off the ghosts, so that
Oh,
way
great.
there would be more evidence.
Just like aggravate
Which
them.
like why didn't you do that during the Channel 7 segment? You know what I mean? Like just when there's cameras, whatever.
Maybe they did. No?
Maybe they did. Maybe they did. But the part I saw at least online was that he did this when Paul and Tony were here. But when doing this, the goal was to piss it off so that way they could record as much evidence as possible. And activity would pick up when he read the Bible. There was like an off room that nobody used in the house. And apparently everyone who ever went in there said it felt really fucking creepy, as if
I
like
hate
the
that.
ghosts, that was their room. So he would go into that room with all the lights off and read the Bible.
I
I
feel
hate
like
that.
I feel like every old house has a room like that.
What's your room?
Blaze's
office.
room.
Yeah.
Oops.
Which is wild because I feel so good in that room.
I just can't even look in there.
Really? I've taken full ass sleeps in that room.
I glance in there every time and I'm like, nobody.
When the sun is setting, something's off in that room for sure. When there's like
When did you nap in there?
when we were prepping for the show.
Oh, I forgot about that. I was in such a
Because you said the studio was like too messy for me to sleep in, but I also didn't want to like sleep in your bed, and I wasn't gonna get in Leona's crib, so all that was left, kinda.
And there was like an hour left of our night to sleep, so we might as well sleep somewhere. I recall.
I think I actually picked that room to sleep in because I assumed I would be uncomfortable and I'd wake up faster, so I wouldn't accidentally sleep through working.
Oh, well, maybe they made you feel right at home. I've never felt negative energy. I just get like creeped out. That's all.
There's definitely something creepy in there sometimes, but I think when I went in there. I was so tired, I didn't even care.
Good.
And I even told them, I was like, do whatever you want, but don't touch me. I said
But
something out
let
loud.
me sleep.
I made some sort of proclamation where I was like, you can do whatever you want, but you cannot physically touch me. And then I just went to bed.
Nice. It is a comfy futon too. That might be part of it.
It's a good futon.
Yeah.
Let me see. Just to aggravate the ghost. Oh, so he's reading the Bible, and he goes into the dark room, or which may be the ghost room, starts reading the Bible to piss them off, and a bullet and a shot glass at the same time both fly around the room. And
What?
when they land, someone touches them, and they're like hot to the touch.
Oh, they're microwaved.
Another blah, 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 where were we? Oh, and eventually they stopped using this tactic of reading the Bible when a battery flew too close to the baby, and it was like testing. It felt like this ghost was finally testing
pushing
boundaries.
its limits. Yeah, no, yeah.
I think because it was like, if you want to read the Bible to piss me off, then I'm going to piss you off. And now I'm throwing shit at your kid.
Right.
So they stopped reading the Bible after that. But another time, Kirsty said, she was just like, you don't know what's going to happen in this house. You never know when it's going to do something. And immediately a knife went flying into the room.
It was like, that damn right.
So it was definitely, it feels like this thing for sure intelligently responds to people.
Yeah, it sounds like it knows what it's doing. Yeah.
And while there, Paul and Tony witnessed at least 37 incidents. And on their last day there, they heard a sound outside, and everyone watched a light bulb slam onto the concrete and not shatter. Like just
shatter? Ew.
Slammed onto the concrete, did not shatter. And it was like a weird looking light bulb. It was like a weird yellow color. Everyone in the house was like, I've never seen that light bulb in my life.
They didn't even know where it came from. Ew.
Which is like, so is it now haunting other areas and it stole that light bulb? Is that light bulb from the past and it brought it back to like, is it from a previous owner and like it just like appeared from time and space? I don't know.
Is it from hell? Who knows?
Is it Satan's light bulb?
Yeah.
Is it the devil's light?
Satan's light bulb.
The devil's light. So they all go into the house because they're like, that's fucking crazy. More gravel is thrown across the room and a crucifix slams onto the table.
Now we're talking.
Paul and Tony were the last people to officially observe this poltergeist, and only a few months later, the housemates did finally fucking move. By the way, they were like, "I'm out of here."
Good.
As soon as they left, first, I love that Tony and Paul were here to catch some real activity, and then they find this like mysterious light bulb and a crucifix slam on the table, and then they went, "Well, time to go."
We're looking for a snipe out in the forest, or what's it? What are they looking for?
A yowie.
Yowie. So we gotta go.
They were like, and just as quick as we appeared, we are gone.
Thank you so much for your time. Goodbye.
So then months later, the housemates move. And as soon as they left, the activity also seemed to stop, and nobody has reported any hauntings since.
Since all the roomies left.
Yes. So it's thought that the attachment came from them. Before they left, though, this is wild, the landlord had some beef with them, and he tried suing them for property damages to the house. But then they were like, we literally have had knives thrown at us every day. Like, of course there's property damage to this house. Like, we couldn't patch the walls fast enough. A knife would just come right back. And
that sucks, though, for both parties. Because it's like, well, now what do you do? Like, someone has to fix it.
Well, weirdly, like, I've never heard of a case like this. But thanks to the media coverage and how popular this fucking ghost was, the judge had heard about this poltergeist. And I guess he was like also a believer in the spooky.
Oh my God.
And he straight up said the damage was not the housemaid's fault because it was a poltergeist, and that the landlord could not evict them or sue them for property damages.
And that was season 1, episode 1 of Judge Judy.
And that's what you missed on Glee. Man. While moving out, the landlord, I guess, also had security guards go and check the state of the house. Like, I guess while the housemates were in and out for the last week, he had security guards going to check the state of the house. And one of the security guards was actually interviewed in the segment. And he even said, like, a knife got thrown at his feet. Like, he was in there by himself and a knife got thrown across the house. So even he believes it. Which is pretty telling to me. I think that's like pretty dope that he's like, even I fucking saw something.
A security guard there on business only, like, yeah.
Yeah, but then of course there's like the naysayers who are like, well, he just wanted his like 5 seconds of fame. He just said he saw something. Whatever.
Okay.
Here are the theories as to this poltergeist. The first one is that maybe this house was haunted before the families even got there. Maybe they didn't bring it. The ghost was already there. There was a cleaning lady who came in between tenants, and she said that the house always felt really fucking creepy. It was oddly cold in the summer. The doors would open and close by themselves. And at some point, her or someone who was helping her clean, like, had to run out of the house because they were so freaked out by this place.
So it was bad already.
And someone pointed out that the landlord had a family of 7 and could have really used a bigger house like this one he was renting out to people, but he lived in a smaller house down the road, and so some people think maybe he knew it was haunted and chose to live somewhere smaller. I think that could also be like you could do a back and forth really quick on that of like, well, he probably just wanted to like rent out the better house so he got more money.
Issue. Yeah, who knows? Yeah.
But someone noted it of like maybe he knew and didn't want to live there. But Dave and Jill, one of the 2 couples who live there, Dave and Jill, they lived there first before Andrew and Kirsty moved in, and they never had any activity until
it's that fucking Kirsty.
She's always the center of the story, isn't she?
She seems to always walk in the room right at the right time. I'm not blaming her. I'm just saying,
it's very convenient.
Yeah, I'm just saying I think maybe she unintentionally could have had something to do with this.
The ghosts have picked a scapegoat, and her name is Kirsty.
Yeah, poor thing.
So Dave and Jill, they kind of shut down that rumor of like maybe it was haunted beforehand. Because even if the cleaning lady thought it was creepy, they were like, we literally lived here for like a year and nothing ever happened.
Maybe it was like creepy, but like Jill and Jack and Jill. What the fuck are their names?
Dave and Jill.
Dave and Jill. Maybe they just didn't have that
the X factor.
Yeah, or like that openness or acceptance of it or something that like then Kirsty maybe after the trauma of losing their friend, maybe like it just turned into a kind of perfect storm.
Great point that like maybe it was haunted, but it was just kind of like latently haunted.
Yeah,
until like someone could unlock it. Yeah.
Right.
It's like Blaze and Allison moving into a house that's like very haunted, but they'll never see a damn thing.
They'll never see a damn thing. And then meanwhile we're like there's just knives and shit flying through the air.
And then you and I walk in and now they're blaming it on us. It's like,
yep,
wait a
sounds
minute.
Right.
So that because Dave and Jill, they said that they never had any activity until Andrew and Kirsty showed up. That leads to the first theory that this might be a hoax, because some thought that maybe the tenants, aka Andrew and Kirsty, were doing this for clout, or I mean, they also, because items were getting thrown around the house with a toddler there, and the toddler never got hurt. So they were like, maybe it was one of the baby's parents who wouldn't dare to do that.
Right.
Specifically, many thought that they were taping. This is like what they think, if this was a hoax, how it was happening. They thought that the items were being taped to the ceiling fans, and then they would just flip the switch and let it just spin, and items are just ricocheting across the fucking house.
I mean,
with a baby. So like that defeats the purpose of
knives. Hot knives.
So that defeats the point that it would be one of the parents doing this. Like, you're not just going to like let knives go flying around the house with your baby.
I mean, usually once you're baby proofing a house, like knives taped to the ceiling fans are a no-go. Like that's at least what I've heard. I know it's controversial, but
well, also because like maybe let's say it was Andrew or Kirsty or any of the adults.
Yeah.
And they were just not aiming at the baby. You can't prevent that if you're doing it at random and just letting the ceiling fan decide. So that shut things down pretty quickly when people were like, oh, it's a hoax and this is how it's happening. People were like, then it's not any of them causing it. I don't know what to tell you. But on top of that, people actually tested out that theory of like taping things to a ceiling fan and just letting the fan run.
Test that out for fun.
They do it with Leona in the room.
Yeah, right.
They did test that out and just let the fan run, and whenever things shook off the fan and flew, it didn't really work. The trajectories didn't make sense. A lot of times the items would just shake like out of the tape and then just kind of fall instead of go flying.
Yeah.
And nearly 20 people have been in this house investigating and have tried actively to debunk this. Someone would have either checked the fans or noticed that they were all falling from a fan.
From a fan and like clattering up there before falling and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Paul was quoted saying, if the TV people were right and the whole situation was a setup, then why continue the show when Tony and I got there? Like, why would the ghosts keep doing this? We weren't reporters. They weren't getting any money or publicity from us. And yet the activity continued the whole time. So that was Paul in defense, being like, this wasn't a hoax. And Tony was quoted saying, if it really wanted to hurt me, it could have embedded the knife in my back rather than hurl it past me. But the more that we saw, the more we understood that the residents' fury came at the smug, ill-informed skeptics. So they were like, the longer we were there, the more we could see why these people were just pissed off at anyone
Mhm.
thinking it was a hoax, because this is so fucking real.
Yeah.
So if it was a hoax, a lot of people thought, because that was kind of the theory of like, oh, it's a hoax and it's all of the residents doing this. There was the other theory that it's a hoax and not all the residents are involved or are in the know about this.
Yeah.
And that led to people thinking, obviously, this is all Kirsty's doing.
Oh,
So,
Kirsty.
They thought that it must be her. One, because she's the one who was home the most often because she was taking care of the baby. But taking care of the baby by throwing knives at it. Okay.
Yeah.
But people also maybe thought that because they already attached her to the hoax theory with Channel 7, that this was not a fair argument. That, like, maybe she was just associated with hoaxes, and so that's how we landed here.
Yeah.
Also, the hauntings were happening around the clock, whether or not Kirsty was there. So there were times where she wasn't in the house, believe it or not, and there were still things being thrown at everyone. Right. Paul and Tony, this is probably my favorite quote of all of it. They were in defense of Kirsty in this moment. Paul and Tony said, "I'm confident of two things. If anyone was pulling stunts, it was Kirsty, and Kirsty wasn't pulling stunts."
Oh, I love this. Yes. That's wonderful.
They were
wonderful
like,
insight.
This is fucking nobody's fault. This is a real ass ghost. But then people thought, well, maybe Kirsty isn't doing this as a hoax. Maybe this really is that her and Andrew brought something with them when they moved in, because then that would also
line up with the timeline of it.
Yes.
Okay.
So people thought maybe she was inadvertently bringing energy into the house when she moved in, or maybe she was cursed. Reason one being that there was allegedly no activity until her and Andrew got there. Reason two being that Andrew and Kirsty previously lived in a house that maybe had activity in it. At a previous house of theirs, Kirsty and Andrew had stones also being forcefully thrown at their windows and doors.
Oh, what?
At the same time, at work, items would go missing and end up in weird places. So at the time, they didn't even think of it as a ghost at the time. So for context, Andrew and Kirsty are like incredibly racist.
Oh, interesting. Plot twist.
And they were very outspoken about that. In fact, Tony Healy himself at the parapsychological research lecture I watched, he was very upfront about it. He was like, they were incredibly racist.
Jesus.
And so they had activity happening at their house, but they excused all of it as people mad at their views, like someone,
oh, for God's sake,
pulling things on their house. Which, like, they had stones being thrown, which I could imagine, like, someone in protest, like, throwing rocks at your fucking door.
Yeah, that one tracks, yeah.
They had items go missing and end up in weird places. That sounds more like someone's breaking into your fucking house. I don't know how true that is.
Weird hoax that is, yeah.
They did have a weird situation happening when it comes to missing items at their place of work. So they worked kind of at like a mess hall, and they would find cups full of coffee grounds that could not be explained. And then knives would go missing. And they would be found stabbed into the freezer's meat.
Ew.
Which is very fucking creepy. But I don't know if that was to like threaten them or scare them or whatever.
Try and get some prime rib? Like, I don't know. It's weird.
Or just maybe just to ruin their day. I don't totally understand, but it certainly was freaky.
Ruin my day.
But at the time, Andrew and Kirsty never considered it was a ghost. They always thought these were things being pulled by people who didn't like their views.
Oh, sure.
But now that they're in this haunted house, it seems like they're trying to... It's like, they're like, oh, well, in hindsight, maybe it was a ghost and nobody was actually that mad at us for our shitty views. Good. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's like a weird... They're bringing up their past to like justify the now when like they weren't ever using that story before.
Yeah, it's a little... Yeah, I get you.
Kirsty also at one point said that she thought, oh, we didn't bring any energy with us. We actually think it's cursed. Because...
Kirsty.
Oh.
Just saying.
No, I like where your head's at. Hang on a second. We got to do something about that.
It's leaning on Letitia is where it's at.
Letitia Lemon. Before people who are only listening don't know that you're leaning against Letitia Lemon.
Squishmallow.
You're like, who's Letitia? Hang on a second.
I'm just resting my head on Letitia's warm bosom.
What's your dolphin one? Dolph's name?
Oh yeah, Dolph. He's over there. That's Moonshine's mommy.
And Letitia Lemon is your next mommy, I guess.
No, I'm Letitia Lemon's mine. Moonshine stole Dolph from me, so Letitia's mine.
Well, okay, so these people are, justifying the ghosts now with like probably just people mad at them for being racist in the past. But she also is saying that maybe they didn't bring the energy. Maybe she was cursed all along because at one of the houses, she saw some indigenous people on her property and she turned that into a whole story about them cursing her.
Sure. Yeah, that definitely.
I could get into the details of it. It's not worth anyone's time.
Doesn't seem like it.
So basically, she never considered the activity at the first house to be paranormal until now. And now that she's maybe in an actual haunted house, she's like, oh, in hindsight, yes, I've had ghosts with me. So maybe I am the reason that things got brought over here. It is weird that she had stones flying around in 2 different houses, but it seems like one was at her door and her windows outside versus like raining from the ceiling.
Right. This
inside.
Feels like amplified times 1,000.
Yes. So that's one theory that it's, that she inadvertently did this and it's indigenous people's fault, I suppose.
Right, sure.
Another theory is that Channel 7 actually suggested this, that the poltergeist was actually just energy from the original owners.
Okay.
Because the original family who built this house in the 70s, they lived there for 20 years. They loved this house a lot. And when they were evicted, they literally left kicking and screaming. They were like so attached to this house. They loved this house.
Oh.
But the original family's still alive. So it's not like they're dead and their energy is still here.
Oh, weird. Okay. So yeah, there's no like traumatic thing that happened to them.
Can you hear this stupid fucking...
What? No.
Lawnmower? Okay.
Oh.
If anyone can hear it, there's a lawnmower outside. Sorry. But so yeah, the family's still alive, so it's not like their ghosts are in this house. But then they were like, maybe it's not the ghosts on the property. Maybe they cursed the property when they left because they wanted to live there so badly. I don't know. And then the family themselves suggested that maybe it was the family themselves, like the original owner said this.
Okay.
He said, maybe because we miss the house so much, it's our anger manifesting at the house when we're asleep. What?
How often? First of all, when do you sleep?
Are you asleep 24 hours a day?
Why do you keep sleeping?
And so angrily.
I think you need to get your vitamin D and iron levels checked, first of all. Second of all, what the hell? That's alarming and also not good for your health. If you're that angry all the time that you even admit it might be creating supernatural occurrence violence, like you need to get that checked out.
Under order.
Order, indeed.
Another theory is that this all could have been started from the storm the day that they first got activity.
Yes, the storm. That feels like when it started kind of to really pick up.
They think that might have set off something electromagnetic in the spheres.
In the ether.
And then the final theory is that this could have really been Troy or the friend that passed away.
Troy.
And if not Troy, then it could have been the people living there because they were his friends. They could have been bringing this energy out of an already haunted house while grieving.
That's my theory. That was what
I agree.
Theory I align with most, I would say.
I agree, because the death only happened 2 weeks before this activity started.
2 weeks. I keep forgetting how close that was. Yeah.
And so they were probably just, it's one person who grieving their best friend, but imagine a house of like 5 people all grieving one person who died 2 weeks ago, pretty near the property. And and maybe the house was already haunted. Yeah. So that's my theory. I'm glad you agree with me that they just generated a lot of negative shit. And also, like, what are the odds that Troy's name would show up? So, like, maybe something intelligent knew what they were feeling or overheard them talking about Troy. Or maybe it was almost
like them manifesting it, but slightly off. Like, maybe they were just so much thought about Troy that it, like, manifested his name on that thing, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. So we probably won't ever know the actual truth about this, but the Humpty Doo Poltergeist is one of the most prolific haunts in Australia. And a final quote from Paul, the cropster, is that the Humpty Doo case seemed to have almost everything. Showers of stones, rappings and scratchings, dangerous objects thrown with great force but without causing injury, threatening messages, mind games, violent reactions to prayers and religious paraphernalia, and resistance to exorcism. I get asked, was it real? Yes, it certainly was. I remain convinced that what I observed was a poltergeist.
Cropster has spoken. The cropster has spoken. I believe it.
I believe it too.
I don't always believe the stories necessarily or all of it, but this one sounds pretty compelling to me.
I mean, that's a lot of witnesses and none of them saying this isn't real.
And nothing like really pointing at anyone besides a faint reflection of somebody in the, like nothing really seemed to, it's not like, oh, and then they found dust of gravel under one of their beds. Like, I don't know. It's like there was nothing that you could kind of point to.
You would think with 5 housemates and so many people in their home, someone would have seen something.
Them. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So that is probably, from what I've seen so far, the most famous poltergeist of Australia.
I can't believe I've never even heard of such a thing.
Me too. And all of it, by the way, because of one random mention when I covered the Gyra ghost.
That's right, because it was such a compelling name.
And someone said something like, this was the biggest poltergeist until we got the Humpty Doo Polts. And I was
As
like,
everybody knows.
So anyway, thank you, Gyra Ghost, for the shout out to the Humpty Doo Poltergeist.
It's all connected. Good job, Em.
Thank you. Not only do I like a nap, I like a little bougie nap. Ooh. I want to feel like I'm in something buttery and soft.
It's like glamping, get cozy, but for naps. I like it.
It's that change, by the way, not only it just feels nice, but it upgrades your sleep, and it's with the softest 100% organic cotton sheets from Boll & Branch. And no matter the kind of day you had, you'll go into instant relaxation mode when you climb into these sheets. Again, breathable, buttery, soft. It is just a delight.
The more you use and wash them, the softer they get. And I'm like, it's like the more you nap, the softer your sheets get. Like it's like a winning formula.
Twist my arm. Yeah. And they're crafted by artisans who earn the pay and respect that they deserve. These all season sheets have a breathable, unmatched softness to start. And like you said, get softer with every wash. And if they don't change the way you sleep, you can send them back for a full refund.
Now's your chance to change the way you sleep with Boll & Branch. Get 15% off plus free shipping on your first set of sheets at bollandbranch.com/drink. That's Boll & Branch, BOLLAND branch.com/drink to save 15%. Exclusions apply. See site for details. I don't know about you, but I'm one of those people that loves like the little comfort luxuries, I mean,
you don't know about me?
Stupid question. No, it's like the perfect match we've found here with Quince, okay? Because you can make your home feel like a very luxurious space and like long-lasting, good quality stuff. You get it all from the same place at Quince, and it's so affordable that you feel like, oh, I can do this to my wardrobe too.
I feel like I could wear it on like Rodeo Drive and get away with it. What I mean?
Just like I know.
Quince offers a range of high quality items at prices within reach, like 100% Mongolian cashmere sweaters. We have talked about those. We own those. We love those. But the best part is that all Quince items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
They also only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. So give yourself the luxury you deserve with Quince. Go to quince.com/drink for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns.
That's QUINCE.com/drink to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/drink. Man, I got back pain from sleeping. I have sweats from sleeping. I have bad dreams from sleeping because I just have a terrible mattress. Just kidding. I have a Helix mattress. None of those things exist.
Opposite day.
No, I am very lucky to have myself a Helix mattress, and Christine also has a Helix mattress, which she often records from. So we just love very much.
It's just like my workplace and my sleep place, and it's just all good things in one. Yeah. So
I was gonna say, if you like something super cozy, if you want to sit in it, if you want to eat in it, if you want to study in it, if you want to sleep in it, if you want to roll around in it,
if you want to do something silly in it, wink.
A few silly things you could do. There's a range of silliness that could happen in there.
Look on the internet. It's all there.
Or if you just want to hang out and listen to it, that's why I drink in your Helix mattress, you can do that. And all you have to do is go to helixsleep.com/drink for 27% off site-wide. That's helixsleep.com/drink for 27% off site-wide. helixsleep.com/drink.
All right, welcome back, everybody. In my breaking news, my period started, so congratulations to me, and it does explain a lot of my energy, maybe. I think maybe that
does track.
Doesn't it? It feels like it answers some of our unanswered questions. So here I am, I'm back, and I do want to issue a quick apology to my friend Julio because, also known as the Flower Hat, by the way, he had a blue check mark before I ever did, so I feel like, he's one rung above me. But Julio had suggested the Helen Przinski story to me last week and was like, you have to cover this, which is why I covered it. And it would have been great to mention that after my weird meltdown about how I don't know about our process and stuff. But I thought he submitted Frank McAlister, which is what I'm covering today. So I was like going through our text being like, where is his thing about, like, I was going to give him a shout out. And then I was like, wait a minute. And I had a sinking feeling and I typed in Helene and his text was like, I have this crazy story. So I texted him. I was like, don't think I'm just like totally cutting you out when I tell the story. I just forgot. I'll bring it up today. And he actually said, he said, re-record everything. And I said, okay, maybe I will. And so here we go. This is the story of Frank McAlister, not brought to you by Julio, but sort of.
In spirit, though.
In spirit, maybe. So Frank McAlister was born September 20th, 1973, to parents Cindy and Doug. He was a very happy child. He loved attention, and his favorite feeling was making people laugh.
Aww.
When Frank was 8 years old, his parents divorced. This is already starting to sound like our biographies. We just loved attention. Our parents got divorced.
Keep it going. Keep it going.
Cindy, his mom, said that she and Doug, now her ex-husband, had their ups and downs and they just couldn't make it work anymore. But, being the 80s, early 80s, it was 81 at this point, divorce, although it was acceptable enough, it was still hard for women. Like, it was just hard to get back on your feet. It
was still taboo.
It was very taboo, exactly. And even legally speaking, like that, those equal rights were very new as well. Like,
not even 10 years old.
Yes, exactly. So I talked about the Equal Credit Opportunity Act of 74. And before that, women were not even allowed to own a bank account or to open a bank account, excuse me, if without their husband's permission or their father's. I mean, it's like so ick. And same with, like, obviously mortgages, credit cards, loans, you name it. And so the ECOA, when that was passed, made it explicitly illegal for banks to discriminate based on sex, on race, color, religion, national origin, sex, marital status, or age. But Cindy, this law had just passed. She was a new mother. Everything didn't change at once, especially from town to town, state to state. And so getting divorced in 81 was more complicated for her than it was for her husband.
Of course.
So, so I tell you all that because Frank's dad, so her ex, Doug, moved back to Redding, California, where his family was from. And his mom, Frank's mom, Cindy, had to make the really tough decision to send Frank with his dad because she just said it was too much. I had to get myself back on my feet before I could figure out how to care for him.
Yeah.
And so, that becomes just a big, I guess, plot point, which is why I described all that. And it was really devastating for her to it was like a sacrifice, right? To like let her son go. She said, I just thought he'd have a better life there.
Yeah. But
even though it like
for him, it like looked like she abandoned him or something.
No, I don't think so. They stayed really close. It just I think probably eats at her like the what ifs, like what if I had said, no, stay here instead of go with your dad, Okay. And I think that's kind of where that sticking point is. But you know, for what it's worth, I think it was a very noble decision because at this point in her life, she didn't even have a car, and she had a young child
who needed attention, who needed
a lot of attention.
Well, someone to be attentive to them.
Oh,
I
thought you meant who needed attention. I was like, yeah, and who was running a puppet show every 5 minutes. That was us, yeah, and who was directing all the neighborhood kids. Yeah, so I was like, wow, I'm pulling the punches here. Yeah, he needed a lot of attention. No, but you're right. Like, she basically said, like, I barely had the means to get myself to the grocery store, let alone like care for a kid and bring him to school and, you know, all that stuff. And she wanted to establish her life. So she missed her son, Frank, desperately, but she thought he'd be better off living with his father in Redding, California, while she figured out her life. So Frank and his dad had always been extremely close, and they bonded over fishing. That was their favorite activity. When he was younger, Frank used to take his fishing pole outside and just practice with his dad's fishing pole over and over and over without any water, just like to practice doing it.
Just throw it and bring it back.
Just throw it and probably drag like sticks and leaves with you every time.
I'm sure his dad loved that.
I know, right? And so now that they were in Redding, they lived close to a river, and Frank and his dad spent entire days fishing, picnicking, swimming. He was basically living like a very idyllic life in terms of that kind of 70s, 80s nostalgia, like living in the woods, running around with
the thing you always see in like in slow motion playbacks now.
Yes. Yeah, and like crossing the river on a log. I don't know.
Like the Full House theme song could play over it if you wanted to.
Yes, big time. And so he had that kind of life. And his uncle later described the river that they would always go to as where summer happened for us and happened for Frankie. And I just was like, that's really...
that's so... I know it's going to be sad. Frank's is just sweet.
It is. If someone were to say this is where summer happened for us, it would have been the beach water park. May she rest in peace, which really is an unfortunate place for my childhood memories to go to their grave. But that is probably the most, I don't know, like symbolic location of my youth.
What was it called?
The beach water park.
It didn't have a name. It was just the beach water park.
It was called The Beach. And it we would call it, we're going to the beach. I mean, so Ohio. Like, it's just, but like you pass it every time you go up a certain highway, and every time you drive past, it's just like RIP, because you can see the giant like cliff, water slide, and it's just like decrepit. And then every now and then someone's like, I bought the property and wants to like renovate it. And I'm like, no, I'm not letting Leona go down that fucking cliff slide that I used to do. I don't know why. I just thought like a river would be such a nice place for summer to have happened instead of the beach water park. But
yeah, no, that's how old were you when it's like went defunct?
Oh, I think really old. I think I may have already been in college or like finishing high school. So it was around for a while.
Mine, I think, it's my water park. It's still around. It's called Waterworks.
Waterworks. Okay, that's a better name already.
It's still around, but emotionally, I think it's defunct because I, as an adult, don't think that I could never. Now, I think I'm just, as I'm getting older, I'm like more like aware of germs and shit.
No, it's horrifying. I literally look back sometimes. Alexander and I still sometimes read reviews of it, like on episodes, and we're like, the fact that we basically lived there is so sick. Like, I can't believe I don't have more parasites just like eating my skin.
I remember as a kid thinking, like having like a moment with myself and being like, please be the fun parent that goes to water parks with your kids. I know,
see?
And an adult me is like, fuck you. I'm not
like
doing
Clorox. Get out of my face.
I'm like, I know that it was such a desperate want, and this would have really probably been a bond with me and my future kids, but they're just not going to have that bond. Sorry about it.
But here's what I'll say. Maybe there's a world in which nowadays, 30 years later, things are maybe more sanitized, and post-COVID, maybe they're better implemented. In that case, would you attend maybe a water park?
I would need to see the numbers.
Okay, but you're just saying like in terms of your home water park, you're like never again.
Water parks in general, I'm just aware of like how much pee and like spit and like probably blood and used Band-Aids. Like I'm just like, ugh, like no, thank you.
Yeah, no.
I I think I would look like that loser dad. I would go, but I would be like in goggles and like I would bring
You
like
have
like a cleansing
you
wipe on my face.
have to read or listen to my podcast. You have to listen to my podcast. It's called Beach Tea Sandy Water Too Wet, and let me
What episode? The water park one?
the water parks episode. It's Great Wolf Lodge, maybe, or I don't know,
Oh,
but I got to tell you, it was probably one of the most unhinged, and we talk a lot about the beach water park, home of our childhood.
I'm getting to it right now. Anyway, I will
Oh my
listen
God,
to
Em, are you
it.
gonna listen? I'm like embarrassed now. I'm like blushing.
I just started listening to our own podcast.
Really? How's that going?
Well, I started listening like a couple months ago
I
now.
started listening a little bit too, interestingly enough.
It's weird to hear
Mhm.
myself, but no, and then also like I feel like I weirdly am imposing if I listen to you and Zandy talking. I know it's literally a podcast, but I'm like I feel
Please.
like I'm
I beg of people, if you want to listen to it, go for it. If you don't, I have zero, like, please don't do it just to, out of a feeling like you have to. But I'm so thankful when people who want to listen to it do, because then I don't have to like tell them things. Like they'll just know, you know what I mean? Like how my neighbor Anne and Blaze are both caught up on my life because they listen to my podcasts. And it's like really comforting to have a neighbor to go to yoga with and Blaze, and they just know what's going on.
Well, whenever I listen to a podcast of like if I hear myself on a podcast, I can't listen to it.
No, unbearable.
But so I recently tried getting into, and That's Why We Drink. It's a pretty good podcast. You should listen to it. And
No thanks.
and but Beach Too Sandy, I feel like because I actually know the two of you, I'm like, I don't want to be that person who like live texts you my opinion on things.
No, please
but I feel like
do.
I'll have things to say.
I already have so many of them, including Julio and whom I've already mentioned multiple times. So yeah, no, it would be an honor, really, if you listen to the water park one. Also, and we talk about you so often because I know you don't ever listen that I'm like, now I'm a little bit nervous that I've said things about you.
I have been tagged on the TikTok clips whenever you mention me.
I
so
see
far,
that every
you're
time
right.
I go, now what did I say? I don't know. I don't know what I said.
So far, I've stood by everything you've said. So
good.
You're doing good.
Yeah, maybe just stick to the water parks episode then, because
perfect.
It's pretty gnarly. Okay, all that to say, basically, he had this kind of idyllic childhood that very nostalgic. Northern California, or I don't know, central Northern California, just beautiful, woodsy 80s, running through the woods with your, very close with your dad and uncle and going camping and hunting and fishing, blah, blah, blah. So very nostalgic. And he really, really grew up pretty well there. And by the time he was 19 years old, this was the spring of 1993, he is a happy young adult. He's making plans for the future. He had recently proposed to his girlfriend, Danelle. And Danelle and he planned to elope in Reno and start building a life together as adults and start a family. The issue was Frank wasn't sure how to, get the financial means to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And he had been in a car accident a few months prior and had received a roughly $5,000 insurance settlement for totaling the car, or for the car having been totaled. But beyond the $5,000, he didn't really have much, especially if they were like moving out of state,
Sure.
And
it's going to go to the car, probably.
And right, you're going to need a car and all that. And so he worked at a local restaurant as a cook, and he made some money there, but not too much, obviously. But he was determined to take that $5,000 and hopefully turn it into a larger sum so that he and Danelle could really start their lives together. So on May 6th, Frank borrowed his fiance's, Danelle's car to run some errands. And basically, he didn't quite tell her, but he had mentioned going to see a friend and that he had plans for the rest of the day, but he'd be back that evening.
Cool.
By the time it was late, Frank was still out and Danelle went to bed. But when she woke up the next morning and discovered he still hadn't returned with her car, she started dialing his pager. Good times.
Mm-hmm.
She dialed his pager multiple times, and when he didn't respond, that's when she started to freak out. And she called Frank's mom, who also hadn't seen him, and tried paging, nothing. So Cindy agreed that this was unlike Frank. So she and her husband Jack started driving to Reading to meet with Danelle. And this is where
Okay.
I always just get this sense of like that
The
impending
doom.
doom. Yes, I wrote doom like in my notes. It's that feeling
Yeah.
of like having to drive. And I think a recent story I covered also discussed that notion of having to drive like through the night and your adrenaline is like keeping you up, but you have no idea what's like meeting you on the other side. And
Yeah.
oh, it's
And
just
also
so
like
chilling.
the reality of like the fact that I'm even in this car going to look is not a good sign. Like
Exactly. Like it's already bad. Things are bad
it's already
already.
bad.
You
Yeah,
just
we're
don't know
starting it
how bad.
bad.
It's almost like you don't know how bad and you fear the
It's
worst.
it's the moment when you're already preparing
Hmm.
for like
The
the worst thing that could
unthinkable,
happen. Yeah.
probably. Yeah. And so that is kind of exactly how it went. She and her husband, Jack, so his stepdad, Frank's stepdad, drove to Reading to meet with Danelle. And the entire time, Cindy just kept telling herself, Frank will be there by the time you get there. And, they don't have cell phones at this point, obviously. And so she's just hoping that by the time they arrive, this is all solved itself and they can have a coffee and move on.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when they get to Reading, there's still no sign of Frank anywhere. The police take a missing person report, but it's a 19-year-old man. He's been gone less than 24 hours. It's like, I mean, there's only
Yeah.
so much they can do. They don't exactly jump into action right away. However, it was a red flag that he had recently cashed that insurance check, meaning
Oh.
he presumably had $5,000 on him.
Oh shit.
And
So now it's like, did he get robbed or what
yeah,
is he doing with that $5,000? Yeah.
it's sort of like that could have put a target on him. So the official assumption was, hey, listen, he'll show up sooner or later, but we're going to note this and make an official report. But Frank's family was like, no, he would not have gone somewhere overnight. He would not have not answered his pager. He would not have told nobody where he was going. And he would have contacted us by now if something like car troubles had happened to him.
Sure.
And all they could do was wait, which again is my worst nightmare. The idea of just sitting there with nothing to do but wait for answers. I
Also,
mean,
I would think too, like if you have that much money, you at least could like break a five and make a phone call, like find a
exactly.
payphone,
So
walk into a
exactly.
hotel and
It's
borrow
not
their
like he
phone.
was completely empty-handed. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a
So
good point.
it's the fact that he wasn't accessible at
In
all.
any
Yeah.
yeah, like not even using someone's phone or anything. Yeah, that's a good point. So hours later, just before midnight, a call came in from a Costco in Reading reporting an abandoned vehicle in their parking lot, which they said had been there overnight, so since May
Mm,
6th. And police responded and identified the vehicle by the license plate, and it was Danelle's car, so the car that that Frank had borrowed from her.
damn.
Frank was nowhere in sight. However, the car and its wheel wells were caked in mud, as if the car had been driving through some very like off-roading rural areas, and then abandoned here and ditched in a hurry. The window was still rolled down, the key was in the ignition, and when they opened it, they saw that there was blood everywhere. There was blood
Oh,
pooled in the driver's seat, stained the door. There was a backpack filled with bloody newspaper and a white
what?
t-shirt on the floor that was completely soaked with blood.
Oh my God. Oh
Just
wow.
horrific gore. And the detectives said later in interviews that they knew based on the amount of blood in the vehicle that whomever had been attacked probably had not survived this attack. It was
Yeah.
too much blood had been lost. And of course they notify the family they found this vehicle and they have to tell them, the scary bad news. And Cindy later said that her heart broke as she realized Frank just would never be coming back. Like not just
Mm,
today, but never. And his uncle seemingly had the same idea and said, that's when I knew, well, Frankie's gone for good, which is just like, oof.
yeah. I mean, if you're already going into that, if you're already driving down that road with the doom in your heart that like something's not good, and then that happens, very hard to have
To
hope.
go upward at all. Yeah, exactly. To have any like hope. Yeah. Yeah. It must be crushing.
Yeah.
So basically, they turned it into a homicide investigation right then because of the amount of
Sure.
blood and, the abandoned car. So the police turned to the drug scene of Reading, and that was based on some information from Donnell that Frank had occasionally used methamphetamines in the past, and she had heard him mentioning that he might be able to use some of the insurance money and flip it for quick profit.
Okay, I see.
Via drugs. And the problem was Frank was not experienced in this realm whatsoever. I mean, it was like not his kind of forte. Yeah, exactly. And his uncle even said he was pretty naive. Like, this was not really a safe space for him to be wheeling and dealing, you know? Frank's family investigators wondered, like, maybe he made a deal with somebody and it went south and he was killed for that reason. Maybe he was robbed and he was too naive to see it coming. Interestingly, 3 different tips that came in all mentioned the same man, who also happened to be on the drug scene in the area, and that was a man named Brian Bennett.
Okay.
So, of course, police go straight to Brian Bennett first because, as one of the detectives said in an interview, you get 1 tip, okay, that's great. 2, like, wow, we're onto something. But 3
Ding,
different
ding,
people
ding.
call in. It's like, how could you not think this is your guy?
Yeah, like wake up.
Wake up. Wake up.
There's a sign. Don't miss the pattern.
There's a pattern. It's very obvious. And so, according to one of the tips, someone saw Frank at Brian's house, allegedly asking Brian to sell him drugs with the cash he had gotten. And the tipster said they saw Brian then return later to his own house, visibly nervous and fidgety, and that his truck was covered in blood and mud. Okay.
Yikes.
Another tipster claimed Brian was seen driving Donnell's car with Frank in the passenger seat.
Okay.
Also weird. The third caller reported that Brian shot Frank in the head and abandoned his remains at the river where Brian and his family like to go fishing.
Oh, I hope, for multiple reasons, I hope that one's not true. Just for the sentimentality of it.
Isn't that wild? So Frank's dad and uncle searched the river tirelessly when they heard this.
Yeah.
And they knew they weren't going to find him alive, of course, but they wanted to bring him home so they could bury him. So they're out there looking for the body of their son and nephew, which is so just sick.
And just like every time it's like the worst day of fishing, because if you catch something, you're like, what the fuck am I about to pull up? Is it my
you don't want
fucking kid?
Exactly.
Oh my god.
It's horrific.
Because I assume they're fishing. Like, I mean, how or what are they doing to?
No, I
get
think they're
him?
just like wading through the water. I'm assuming.
Oh, okay. I thought they were like trying to like just see if they catch anything
I
on
mean,
the bottom
maybe
of
they
the
have
water.
netting. I don't know, but I'm not sure.
Okay, that makes more sense. Sorry, I didn't even know how to imagine that.
I don't either. But I'm assuming it was more just like they looked to see if anybody had been dumped.
It's visually even more heartbreaking if they're just wading through the water, just like almost like just kicking your feet and like wondering if you'll hit something.
Oh my god, or seeing like a shoe or a sock, and you're like, could that be? And then it's not. I mean, it just sounds like so traumatic.
Oh my god.
And so that's what they're doing. And I just want to I'm just going to say this now. That third tip was bunk. Like somebody just called that in.
Oh, I
just feel like I should say that now because I might forget later. But yeah, that wasn't even a real tip. Like, why would you even invent that and call it?
Why would you say that?
Like, what is wrong with people? It's like somehow it's obviously not worse because thankfully it wasn't true, but it's like, what kind of sicko comes up with that?
It feels extra. I mean, did they know the story of like, oh, that's where we always used to play? And
yeah, they must have. If they said like
sick.
They dumped him where they used to fish. It's like, the fuck? Like clearly they knew them well enough to make that connection.
Like, why would you now
so weird
taint of like a good memory with someone who's dead? Like, what?
My assumption is like they're trying to frame this Brian guy, like this Brian. But like, what a sick thing to make then the family go digging through the river and like, ugh.
Yeah.
It just really disturbed me. But so anyway, of course they go check with Brian because they've gotten 3 tips about this guy. Meanwhile, his alibi checks out. So even when they talk to him, there's nothing connecting him to this at all. It wasn't Brian. So police immediately hit a wall. And there were several more persons of interest, but they didn't have a body, they didn't have a murder weapon, and they couldn't really make much of a case. So for 11 months, really nothing happened. until a call came in on April 12th, 1994 from authorities in a small town roughly 30 miles southeast of Reading called Shingletown, which almost sounds like a made-up name, but Shingletown. So a hiker had discovered human remains in the woods, and one source called him a mushroom hunter, and I loved that.
Oh, a fun guy.
A fun guy.
Just saying.
Oh, that's sweet.
Aw.
So he had discovered human remains while mushroom hunting, which sounds like just the most traumatic thing. And amongst the kind of remains was an ID, a wallet that belonged to Frank McAlister.
Nice.
So the remains had been scavenged by animals, but a grid search uncovered some of the clothes Donnell reported Frank had been wearing when he disappeared. And when they took the jawbone and teeth and compared them to his dental records, it was a match. So they were sure that this was the body of Frank McAlister.
Okay.
So his remains had been discovered 7 miles down a dirt road in a rural patch of pine forest. And Frank's family, they were relieved because they could finally lay him to rest. This was just a story that stuck out to me, and I decided to put it here because this is kind of the portion where they've accepted what's happened to their son. But Cindy mentions in an interview, she starts crying and she says that 2 years after Frank was killed, she'd already buried him. They'd already come to terms with him being gone. But one day she went upstairs to take a nap and she said Frank just appeared before her, but as an 8-year-old boy, his 8-year-old self. And she said he looked at her and said, "Mom, I'm okay." And she noticed that his hair had been parted the way she always did. And she thinks, that might be why he came to her in that version of himself. And apparently said, "Mom, I'm okay. Don't worry about me no more. I'm okay." And she said, and then he went away. And she said she always knew from that moment on he's somewhere safe. She didn't have the closure of knowing what had happened, but she at least from that night or from that afternoon knew in her heart that he was somewhere else and was okay.
Wow.
And I just thought that was such a little crossover, between
you never get to mention a ghost in your stories.
It does not happen often, and it wasn't in all the sources, so I was like, I better put this out there because I think that's pretty cool.
And it sounds like he did the thing of like they appear to you the way that you remember them or want to remember them.
And I bet you that was when he lived with her before they moved away. I know. It's just really hard. It's awful.
If anything had to happen from that, at least she got some closure.
Yes, yeah. And it seems like that really did bring her some level of peace. So for what that's worth, I guess. So while Frank's family could finally, begin burial arrangements, detectives follow up on a prior lead. Back when Frank vanished, Donnell had mentioned that Frank had mentioned stopping by a friend's apartment. And this friend was 21-year-old Curtis Culver. So Curtis lived with his 17-year-old sister, Shanna, and according to one source, their mom as well. But Shanna confirmed with police that, yes, Frank had stopped by and picked her up along with her brother and her on-again, off-again boyfriend, Brian Hawkins. Now, this is a different Brian than the other one. That guy has been fully cleared.
Okay.
So she said her on-again, off-again boyfriend, Brian, and her brother, Curtis, all got picked up by Frank. And the four of them drove around for a while, not really getting up to anything, until Frank got a message on his pager and pulled over to a payphone to make a phone call. He then apparently told his friends he had to go meet someone, dropped them off in town, and told them he'd be back to pick them up later, but never showed.
It sounds like he went to do like some sort of deal.
Like a deal or something. So Curtis, Shanna, and Brian said they eventually took a taxi back to the Culvers' apartment, and their stories all lined up in individual questioning, but detectives at this point after the body's been found, wanted to talk to the trio again to see if there had been any changes in their stories. They'd been the last people to have seen Frank alive, so and it'd been nearly a year since police spoke to them, so they thought it couldn't hurt. But now when they went to go talk to them, they were not interested in speaking to the police and refused to cooperate.
Interesting.
So detectives couldn't prove that any of them had anything to do with Frank's disappearance. Even if any of their fingerprints were found in the car, they said they were in the car with him. So it wasn't going to point to them in any real way.
And what was the situation with, you said the newspapers, the bag of newspapers?
Yeah, the bloodied newspapers.
Yeah, did we ever find out what that was? Did you already say that?
I did not, but you will find out.
Oh, okay.
But remind me if I don't say it, because it's not in my notes, but I had planned to just mention it during one portion. But yeah, if I don't remember to say it, remind me. So they didn't have a case against any of them, and Shanna was 17, so she was still a minor. And so they couldn't even really get a statement from her without, a parent, and so it got kind of complicated. And if it was a lead, then they had to just let it go for now, and that's what they did.
Oof, I'd be so upset if I were.
I know. And they Frank's family just had to, bury him and hope for closure someday. His uncle said that the burial did bring some comfort because at least they could go have somewhere to talk to him, which just broke my heart.
Yeah.
But the question of who murdered Frank and why, of course, haunted his family for years, especially after they did an autopsy, because when the autopsy came back, it was determined that his bones had been cut so severely that somebody had been stabbing him viciously through the chest and had nicked his spine.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And they described it as extreme force. And so, of course, this only upsets the family further, thinking he died and like this, and we don't know who did it, or why.
And also, how did nobody see a bloody assailant walking around? Where did he go? It's just wild.
Well, it sounds like they left
by the
car. Water. Well, that's true too. But the bloody car, I mean,
yeah.
Remember, filled with blood.
I know, but I'm saying then he got out and walked somewhere. And then I'm thinking, well, if he was near that river, they would go fishing, and maybe he rinsed off or something. I don't know. But I mean, it doesn't really matter. Just just a racing thought.
I hadn't thought of that. So it was difficult for people to kind of reconcile with this, especially those who knew him and said he was just a goofy, fun-loving guy and would never hurt anyone, and it just seemed so shocking. And it seemed like what had happened was that he had gone out to make some money and immediately gotten in over his head with the wrong people. And if they were people from out of town just driving through, then maybe they left and maybe they'd never even solve this. It just felt kind of hopeless. If they were complete strangers that no one knew, then there was just no way to track them down. So years just passed and passed. Frank's case went cold. It wasn't until 2012 that anyone even kind of took a look at it. And even that detective put it back down, didn't notice any new updates or anything. Fast forward to early 2018. And Courtney Kreider, this is where things go absolutely fucking bananas. Okay.
Oh, shit. Okay.
Fast forward to 2018. Courtney Kreider, she is a brand new reporter at KRCR News, and she had only started 6 months ago, so she's fresh out, she's young, she's doing those eager reporter, she's doing those early, I'm sure 4:30 a.m. mornings that I had to do once upon a time.
And also Courtney Kreider you're meant to be a reporter. Are you kidding me?
I'm Courtney Kreider. Yeah. I'm Michelle Norris. There's only a few names that really just do that,
Mm-hmm.
I'm Emmethy Schultz. That'll do it.
Sure.
So anyway, she's working, and it's very fun to hear her describe this because she's I think around our age, I'm assuming, and she's like, well, I was at work one normal day in January, and my grandpa called me. So she answers the phone. She's like, Grandpa, I'm at work.
Yeah. Do you mind?
Do you mind?
It's 4:30. Can you go away?
Seriously, just because I'm on the same sleep schedule as you finally doesn't mean I want to talk to you this early. Her grandpa calls and she's like, hey, I'm at work. Can I call you later? And he says, listen, I just met a man through church that I want to talk to you about.
Is it Jesus? I'm not interested.
Have you heard the good news? It's I'm the anchor on the news, but thank you. Yes, I've heard the good news. No, so apparently the way, like, I can only imagine, but the way that Courtney Kreider describes her grandpa, she goes, "Oh, well, everybody in town knows him, and he and my grandma go to church every week, and they're, like, just known in town," right? Like, they're just,
Hmm.
I guess, pillars of the community in one way or
Sure.
another. Yeah,
Characters. Yeah.
characters in town, exactly. And so she says when her grandfather says, like, "Someone approached me, and he wants to talk to you," she's like, "Okay, tell me more." He says this guy came to him and said, "Will you pray with me?" And told him he was from Shingletown and he wanted to talk to somebody about the murder of Frank McAlister.
Okay.
Courtney's grandpa said, "Well, my granddaughter's a news reporter." And he said, "I'd like to talk to her."
It's almost as
So,
if God works in mysterious ways, huh?
isn't it just?
Isn't it
And
so?
so, isn't it just? And so Courtney answers the phone and is like, "Grandpa, I'm working." And he's like, "Yeah, so I have a murderer on the line." Like, what the fuck? It's just crazy. Like, grandpa calls and you're like, "Grandpa, I'm busy."
You know
You
he's going,
know?
that's all good, but hang on a second.
But yeah, like, "Do you want to hear about the murderer or not? I've got him on line too." Like, what the fuck is happening here? But that's what happened. So
That's wild.
essentially, Courtney's grandpa said he wants to confess to you on air. And she's like,
Can you imagine your
"Okay."
first day at the news station and you go, I got a hit.
Okay,
Just
so
don't.
literally, she goes into her boss's office, and she's 6 months into the job, and she goes into she's like, "I have a
She,
story to pitch."
she goes, I would like a promotion now.
Yeah, "I'm at your desk now."
You're going to want to hear this.
Yeah, we're trading places. So she's like, "So weird story, fun fact, my grandpa's a character. He just met a murderer in church, and the guy wants to talk to me." So the boss is like, so the boss remembered the case from back in the day, whereas Courtney may not have remembered it specifically. The boss was like, "Oh my gosh, yes, like if we have any information on that, we need to check this out. So go for it." So you can watch this whole fucking thing. They taped the whole thing. This guy came down to the news station and they interview him. And
Which, like, that on its own, like, I feel like there's a lot of elements we're not even paying attention to. First of all, Grandpa is having a prayer session with a murderer, like, one on
first of
one.
all, what?
Grandpa's like, it's like, don't tell your mom the babysitter's a vampire. It's like, don't tell Grandpa he's literally praying, like, he's alone with a murderer right now and
He's
somehow unscathed.
But like he
First,
seems to know, and he seems to not really care.
chill. He's chill. It sounds like, yeah. And then the other thing. Oh, what was I gonna say? The fact that he had this like overwhelming moment where he needed to confess to even Grandpa.
Yeah.
You would think when Grandpa says, "Oh, funny you should say this. My daughter or my granddaughter is in the news. You could confess publicly." You would think he'd go, actually, never mind. Like he was committed to the bit of
Yes.
doing this, and then
And
he drove there knowing he was going to do it while police were probably surrounding the building, ready
and
to take him in.
literally, yes.
Like what? Like I wonder, like what the hell happened to him where he was like, I'm going through with this."
We don't really know. And like, okay, I have my theories and thoughts, and we'll get to that because I want to hear yours once you have all the facts and all the information and
I
details.
don't even need the facts. I'll just tell you what I'm thinking.
Say it ain't so. But yeah, I'm curious what you're gonna think because anyway, we'll see. But I have some theories as to why he did it. So anyway, yeah, this must be like a surreal dream for this reporter. It feels like something that would happen to Lizzie McGuire in like a movie, that she's a new reporter on the job and then like suddenly
And a murderer just stumbles in to confess
okay,
live.
maybe it'd be like, we'll just make it PG, but you know what I mean?
Confess to me, Paolo.
She gets like the big scoop, right?
She would get the scoop,
and
for
then
sure.
she gets the guy, Gordo, of course,
Mm-hmm. But she would do it in a trench coat and some fashionable specs.
Oh, big time. It's
and then
not
she'd
about
go, "You messed up."
Yeah, it's not about looking pretty. It's about catching the bad guy. Anyway, so she is doing this interview and I imagine it's very surreal. And as I watched her, she looked so young. She's like 22 or 21. I me's probably right out of college. And she's like so young. And it was like back when we all wore like our little skinny jeans and like little, and she's like, she's going, as this guy's like fucking confessing to murder on camera.
Well, she also like, what is going on in her head? Because she has to keep it together, but she doesn't have years of experience talking to people like this and
She's just
interviewing.
like on air with this guy, having
She
to kind
had
of
to
wing it.
be she had to totally just like block it out and be like, okay,
This
yep,
is
you're
happening,
talking about how you
whether I
killed
like it or
someone.
not. Grandpa really threw me a curveball today.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I feel like we would get that subject line in a listener story email, like my grandpa warned me of a killer, but it would be like a ghost of a grandpa.
Yes.
And this is like, no, my real life grandpa called
or it
me
would
and
be
said,
like,
hey,
my
I found a
grandpa
serial
is a killer. It would be
yeah,
like,
or that. Yeah. This is just such a weird take on the whole thing. So he wanted to give a confession to a reporter, and wouldn't you know it, Grandpa's granddaughter, Courtney. Yep, they agreed to do it. So on January 9th, 24 years after Frank was killed, Shanna's on-again, off-again boyfriend, Brian Hawkins, walks into the KRCR studios. And he is shaking. He is visibly nervous. He's on camera. He tells Courtney, well, basically she asks, what are you here to tell me today? And he says, right? Like, how else do you ask this question? And he says, I'm going to turn myself in next door at the sheriff's department for a crime I was involved in years ago, and someone lost their life. It was murder. And Brian describes his involvement in murdering Frank, along with accomplices Shanna and Curtis Culver. He said that every minute of his life has been a nightmare ever since, and that finding God in the church had finally pushed him to confess. And he said, this is as close as I can come to doing the right thing.
Wow.
So while Courtney's calmly continuing the interview, and she says later, like, she's trying to
keep it together.
Well, no, she was trying to convince him to give more details, but like he was holding back on a lot of the details, and she was like getting frustrated. But so she's calmly continuing the interview, and her boss, meanwhile, as this is going on, contacts a sheriff to say, hey, we have this guy in our studio giving a live confession, or not a live, but a taped confession, and says he plans to turn himself in after he's done with the interview. So the sheriff's office thinks fast.
So expect a knock on the door. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, okay, but hold on. Before you air this interview, can you delay it 24 hours? Because there are two other people involved, Shanna and Curtis, and we don't, oh God, balloons. I'm sorry. That was not the time.
It's always the worst. It's always the worst time.
Okay, yeah. True crime doesn't work well with these fucking Apple.
We've got to come up with new symbols, like 2 or something.
Yeah, that feels like that's going to do some rock and roll shenanigans. I think I can turn them off. I just have to figure out how. Anyway, so balloons notwithstanding, her boss calls the sheriff's office and they say, can you please hold off on airing this just 24 hours until we have Shanna and Curtis in custody so they don't flee or so they don't get, the jump on us. So they agreed, and police found the siblings in a town south of Reading, arrested them, and interviewed them separately. Shanna repeated the same story she told in 93 and was very just like, get me the fuck out of here. Like, I don't want to be here. Just like so much attitude. And then the detective says, well, we had somebody come in today and turn himself in, and he implicated you. And she's like, oh, he's full of shit. He's full of shit. And then the detective's like, she really doesn't believe me. So he pulls up the actual news. I mean, it's on a news set, right? Like, he pulls it up. It hasn't aired yet, but he has the tape. And he plays it. And she fucking goes ballistic. Like, loses her damn mind. She's like, he's a liar. He's a liar. He's a liar. Like, she's just losing her shit. And so all of a sudden, like, she's in over her head and she's arrested. And according to the reason she got so frenetic and upset is because, according to Brian, as he said on camera, the murder was Shanna's idea all along because she wanted Frank's money.
Ooh, uh-oh.
So now maybe you're understanding my theory or starting to get a glimpse at my theory that he went to the news station to get ahead of the story almost and implicate himself the least, maybe. It's just a theory of mine.
Also, if that theory is right, it is kind of, it's either incredibly stupid or incredibly smart to get it on tape. Like, because in my mind, when I heard like, oh, he's going to confess live on TV, I was like, good luck to his fucking lawyer. This will be like a slam dunk case for anyone going against him. But also it's like, oh, well, now there's evidence of him, like, trying to do the right thing so that he's, like, less...
Yeah, it's almost like, oh, he looks more admirable in a way, like
Yeah.
he wants to get this off his chest.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so they show this that's where my mind went too. So they show this video, she fucking freaks out, I guess understandably, because Brian said it was her idea all along because she wanted Frank's money. So this is what Brian says happened. Brian told Frank he could be a middleman for drug sales and they could help him make this $5,000 into a bigger sum of money.
Mm.
But meanwhile, having these kind of ulterior motives of robbing him for the cash. So the four of them drove into the woods in Shingletown. Frank drove. Brian sat behind him. He's the guy who just confessed. Next to Brian is Shanna, on again, off again girlfriend. And in front of Shanna in the passenger seat is Curtis.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I think so.
Okay. So the four of them talked for a few hours. Now, Curtis and Shanna, just a reminder, Curtis and Shanna are brother-sister.
Right.
Shanna and Frank are on again, off again, in case you didn't know that already.
Yes.
And Frank is just the unwitting victim here who accidentally got with the wrong people. So they drove into the woods, and apparently the four of them talked for a few hours until Shanna nudged Brian and showed him the huge knife she brought. She wanted him to take it and kill Frank. So apparently Brian is ready to take the knife from Shanna, but out of nowhere, this is Brian's version of events, Curtis pulls out a knife that he brought and stabs Frank before Brian even has the chance to.
Wow. Okay.
Well, I remind you again, this is Brian's version of events on air.
I see. Okay.
So Frank climbs out of the car and falls to the ground. And then Brian follows with Shanna's knife and climbs on top of him and stabs him multiple times. And then finally, Curtis drags Frank, who's still alive, toward the front of the car, then takes a large rock, says, "Look at this," and then drops the rock on his head.
Jeez.
He said they left Frank in the woods, drove to Costco to abandon the car. Curtis and Shanna gave Brian a few $100s of Frank's money that they took, and they took a taxi home and left the car there.
To kill someone for $200 is...
Well, yeah, they made $5,000. They gave him a few hundred of it. Yeah,
that's
sick.
Wild.
Brian told a detective that he had been scared to death ever since, and completely unironically and almost in this like really chilling, quiet way, the detective just says, "I would be too." He says, "I've been scared to death ever since." The detective says, "I would be too." So now they bring Curtis in, who is the brother and who's allegedly the one who actually attacked Frank first. Curtis agrees to do a polygraph, and when a detective says, "You completely bombed it," he decides to tell the truth. He tells a sort of similar story in some ways, but he notably claims that he did not attack first. According to Curtis, Brian actually took the knife from Shanna, reached from behind, wrapped his arm around Frank's head, and stabbed him in the throat from
Holy shit.
behind.
Oh my God.
This is sort of why I was insistent on describing where everyone sat, because Brian sat behind Frank, who was in the driver's seat. And the idea was they were all sitting there talking. Shanna shows the knife, hands it to Brian, and Brian claims, "Oh, but then Curtis pulled a knife and stabbed him," which I just find strange anyway. But
yeah.
And then Curtis is like, "No, he reaches up and he stabs him right in the throat." Curtis actually said he had genuinely believed that Brian was going to arrange some drug business with Frank and had no idea about this murder plot, and he was completely shocked.
Can you imagine being thrown under the bus like that?
Yeah, exactly. And he says Frank
hell?
climbed out of the car. Curtis didn't know what to do. And then he said that he dropped a rock the size of a basketball on Frank's head. And he said it was a mercy killing.
Oh.
I don't like that. He said it was mercy. And I'm like, no. So examination of the injuries to Frank's bones actually did support Curtis's account that Frank was stabbed from someone who was behind him.
Shit. Okay.
So this is why I say there may have been some ulterior motive to him going on the news and sharing his story before
and him
anybody
hiding
else.
behind God and all that.
All
Yeah.
that, yes, exactly. I just call bullshit. I'm sorry. I just do. But I don't know. Some
But
people said
also, like,
he was haunted by
why?
it, and
Well, part of me feels like he must be haunted by it because, like, why now? Like, why would you?
yeah, he said he found God. That was the only thing. But I think the fact that it took so long, is really awful because people lived in misery for decades because of this. 24 years,
Yeah.
It's just so crazy. So, as the story unraveled between Curtis and Frank, Shanna could no longer pretend like she wasn't part of this, and she fessed up as well. So, in November of 2019, Brian Hawkins pled guilty to first-degree murder, robbery, and charge enhancements. Now, I didn't know what charge enhancements were, so I looked into this. I had an idea, but I didn't know specifically. So, fun fact for you. Um, Charge enhancements are additional penalties that can be applied to a criminal charge based on specific circumstances. So, say, you can increase the length of a jail sentence if, for example, let me find an example. If it was a hate crime, a drug crime, if there was a DUI involved, if it was a repeat offense, if it involved a weapon, it can, upgrade the crime to a felony. Just things that kind of tack on and add additional either punishment or
Sure.
justice or
That
whatever
makes
you want to
sense.
call it. And so I don't know. I just never really learned much about that. So any lawyers are probably cringing, but I tried.
Well,
I tried. So in January of 2022, I want to actually mention real quick before I forget. So he pled guilty and was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison, and that was Brian.
okay.
So then we have Shanna, and in January of 2022, I mean, it's just crazy to think this happened so long ago.
2 years ago, 3 years ago.
I know. So January of 22, 46-year-old Shanna pled guilty to her role in the murder and was sentenced to 20 years in prison. Then 50-year-old Curtis pled guilty to manslaughter, robbery, and assault and sentenced to 35 years in prison.
Wow.
Apparently, the whole year for Redding was very wild because just a few months later, Sherry Papini pled guilty to charges related to faking her own kidnapping, which was a story I
My
covered
God.
in 341. So that town was going through it that year, Redding, California.
Sorry, Redding.
Yeah, sorry, Redding. And that was episode 341, if you're interested. Frank's mother, Cindy, said in an interview that she really did believe God pushed Brian to finally confess, but she couldn't understand why it had taken so long, which is sort of like what
Yeah.
you were saying. And she just said, I can't understand why I had to endure so much of my life agonizing over what had happened when
Yeah.
he was just going to confess at the end of the day, which must be just such a hard pill to swallow.
And it's like, thanks, I guess.
I know, it's like a little too little too late, I mean, thankfully they have answers, but still. Frank's family released a statement which said Frank was denied his whole life filled with opportunity, the creation of a family, a chance to love and be loved. To this day, our family imagines what life would have been like for all of us had Frank lived to be a part of all of us. Cindy also said in an interview that this part is, of course, what just breaks my heart every time, but Cindy said in an interview that she wonders whether Frank would be alive if he had lived with her instead of moving to Redding with his dad, because she thought it would be a healthier, safer place to grow up. So it's almost like this, when you asked earlier, I was like, it's just this freak thing. It's like, would he have gotten in trouble here? It's like, would he have found such dangerous people here? Maybe not. Maybe yes. Anyway, so that's
it could have been worse.
story.
Maybe it would have been worse.
Who knows? There's no way to know, but that is the story of Frank McAlister, everyone.
Man, and they all went to jail when they were in or prison when they were in their 50s, right?
40s, 50s.
I wonder if the judge ever
the newspaper. Sorry.
Oh yeah, the newspaper. What?
I wanted to mention there was one source that mentioned the bloody newspapers are what Brian claimed to have used to try and wipe blood off of everything. That he was using newspapers to try and clean off as much as he could, but he was so frazzled that he just kind of left it all behind.
Gotcha. I
So
was gonna say I wonder if judges, how you said like enhancements or
yes,
whatever, or
I
like
think that can be sometimes at the discretion of a judge. Yes.
I wonder if they just add extra time if you got away with it for so long. So it's like, well, if you
Oh, interesting.
gave yourself up when you were 20 or whenever this happened, like you
Mm-hmm.
ended up getting 30 extra years of life out of this. So like now I'm going to add so many years of prison time because you should have made those up in
Right.
the past. I don't know
I
if that's
wonder
like a
because I
real thing.
wonder. I know. I wonder how much is, and it apparently it also varies by state. So yeah, it's hard to know.
Mm,
But I can imagine that being something they take into
right.
consideration. Yeah, for sure.
I would hope that if something happens to me, someone
Well, remember
gets
when,
extra time.
I mean, remember when they discovered recently that not, I mean, recently, it's happened multiple times, but that Nazi guy who was hiding out in Cleveland and they had to like wheel him out and they were basically like, just because you're 95, like you don't get to
Oh,
claim like
yeah.
fragility and all that. It's like, it's just this like you sick fuck blended into the community for so long and like, ugh, yeah, it adds an element if you've been in hiding, for
Yeah.
something so
Uh,
heinous.
And even though like the guy was like, "Oh, I lived in fear this whole time," it's like, well, yeah, you killed someone
I
or
mean,
was
yes,
involved in a killing.
exactly. And there's something about his eyes. I just, when I look at him, I get the heebie-jeebies in a way of like, I don't trust what you're saying.
Really?
Yeah.
What's his name? Not Brian McAllister. Brian
Brian, there are two Brians. I don't want to say the wrong one. And
Brian Hawkins, right?
yes, thank you.
Oh shit. Yeah, creepy.
Doesn't he look scary?
Yeah, I think as soon as imagine being that 22-year-old new news reporter and you're just like, "Oh my god, that person is sitting right in
Oh,
front of
the
me."
photo they put here is really wild.
Scary, right?
That's scary. That's him. He was not that scary on the news, but like
That's
that
the picture I
mugshot
saw
is
because I just went,
horrific.
"Holy shit."
That is like a
As soon
jump scare of a mugshot. Oh my god, it looks like he just beat everyone on the planet to a pulp.
As soon as I saw that picture, I went, "Yeah." I don't
Jesus
know why we had to
Christ.
wonder if he was the killer, but
Yeah, no, that definitely, he was definitely playing up the just like, oh, I'm so sad and scared thing. And I just was like,
yeah.
I don't know, man.
But also, like, I feel like there's got to be research somewhere on like the is it narcissism like to do it on such a grand scale in front of everybody? Like, what was the reason? Was it to go out
Yeah,
with a
was it for
bang? Was it
attention? Like, was it
yeah?
for the clout? Was it like to get ahead of
I don't know.
the punishment? I don't know.
I don't know.
I'm gonna send you a picture of what he looked like at his sentencing because it looks so different, but still I still get the same ick factor.
Yeah,
And
he
to be
still got
clear, I
it in
said
intensity.
ick factor, not it factor. He's just
Oh,
got that special something, that it factor.
he's something really wowed me with that.
But like, look at this picture. I'm sorry. There's something about this picture, and the whole time he was crying, he was like doing just like sitting like that and like
Like
crying, and I was like, "You're not really crying, are you?" Like it just something about it felt off, but I don't know. I'm no expert. I have no clue.
it
Um,
was my neighbor used to call it like sucking on your teeth, like like
oh,
the tightness in your mouth.
oh, interesting. Yeah,
Which is how that looks.
it does.
Um, right before that though, you sent me a very lovely picture of Leona and her new stick,
Oh
and
yeah, and then I immediately ruined it with a bunch of pictures of
what
a
a
murderer.
shift. Yeah. Oh well, good story, Christine. Sad story, but good storytelling.
Oh my God, look, here's a picture of the two of them. Oh, I didn't know such a picture existed. This is Curtis in the front. He's also scary. Curtis and
Oh, Curtis is scarier.
I know, he's really scary. It was weird watching him do the interrogation when they told him he um failed. He
Hmm.
was like, okay. Okay, hear ya. It's just like was
You
so
know he was crashing out
right.
on the
And it's like
inside. He
you're
was like
watching
full
this
panic.
like I can't believe I get to see this moment. This is crazy. I'm watching this man like internally collapse while outwardly in his Under Armour going like, "Okay, man, yeah. Okay, hear ya. Yep."
Yeah,
And
you
it's
know he
like
was
his
trying so
life's
hard not to
over.
punch a wall.
Yeah, it's crazy.
He literally has a Bob's Burger chin.
Does he? Wait, let
Curtis?
me go back and look.
He literally looks
Yeah, he
like how they
does.
draw Bob's
Yes,
Burgers.
he does. He does.
I've always
He
wondered what that
literally.
would look like in real life, but
No,
now I
he
know.
does. He totally does.
Huh. Fun.
Interesting. But yeah, Leona has a stick. Apparently, it's been a couple things. She said, "You shall not pass" a few times, and then she said, "This is my tightrope," and I don't know. There are a
Oh,
couple other things.
what a good
Um,
little baby.
a balance
Oh,
beam. Yeah,
I
they're
love
at the
that little
zoo because
baby.
it's apparently warm out for once.
Oh man, what'd you do yesterday when you watched her 24/7?
I had a mental breakdown. No,
Okay, did she?
well, no, she had a fucking delightful time.
Good, then you killed it. That's all that
Yeah, I
matters.
nailed it. Yeah, I did text you during it. I don't know, but it was fine. We made chocolate covered pretzels. We made chocolate cupcakes. We,
Ooh.
uh, I'm trying to remember what
Why
the
do you
heck.
do that shit with me? What the hell?
Well, because you don't like suck all the life energy out of me and force me to do it against my will like she does.
Aw. Thanks.
So, yeah, we did a lot of crafting. We went to the grocery store.
Dang.
We played hotel.
Ooh. Let's talk about that on the
Oh, on the
Yappy
Yappy
Hour.
Hour, I have to tell you what my suitcase looks like. It's so
Oh, hell
unfair.
yeah.
It's so unfair. She gives me the worst stuff because I'm like not her.
All right. Well, that's all the suspense I need. Everyone hop over to Yappy Hour.
Cliffhanger.
Thumbs down.
Accidental thumbs down. I gotta turn that off.
If anyone wants to go hear what is in Christine's suitcase, that feels like a
You don't want to know.
mysterious story. Tune on into Yappy Hour.
Yes, see us on patreon.com/ATWB podcast and find us the same handle everywhere you look. And also, and that's why for tickets to our live shows and links to our book. Okay, we love you.
And
That's
why
we
drink.